Welcome to the Theory of DFS podcast. I'm Jordan Cooper, aka Blender HD. You can follow me on Twitter there. I'm the co-author of The Theory of Daily Fantasy Sports, the 15-hour audio DFS masterclass at theoryofdfs.com. Join with me this week as Eric Beimfour continues to post his best ball screenshots. Eventually, he'll run out of entries and he'll be back on the show. Bringing on some other great DFS players, although I think this gentleman will be a little bit more humble. Former NFL Millie Maker winner from last year. It's Neil Orfield, NC Orfield 8K on DraftKings and FanDuel, and Player Q DFS on Twitter. Neil, would I be right to say that your success, you're much more humble than most DFS players?
I don't know about that.
It seems like on Twitter you're like, well, it's like, you're more likely to say that you get lucky, or you go through your results and you're like, wow, if I get rid of my top 3 or 4 finishes, I didn't make any money. Just putting that perspective of it's not like you're the greatest thing since sliced bread. Screenshot. That on Twitter. Similar to me, similar to some other sharp players, we give a little bit more realistic perspective on playing DFS for I don't know if this would be considered your primary income, but at least it's a good portion of it now.
Yeah. I mean, I'd say that's more me processing the results, understanding that I'm getting a lot of my DFS income from single days here and there. It's not all coming day to day, and just sort of trying to figure out, it's just interesting for me to look at my results. So I don't know that it's necessarily me being humble, but I do also understand that I'm not the best DFS player out there. I feel like I've got a lot of room to grow in the DFS space. So yeah, you can call it humble if you want. I don't know if I necessarily would. I think there's a lot more, a lot of humble players out there, but I think I'm a good DFS player. So I'm not trying to cut myself short either in doing these analyses. It's just kind of understanding that, yeah, you do day to day. When I win, I'm absolutely getting lucky that day. But I do think I have a pretty good process. I think that I'm a good DFS player. I just don't think that I'm the best of all time. With that said, I am not a former Millie Maker winner. I am still a Millie Maker winner.
You're former in the past. It's happened. You're not currently leading the Millie Maker because there's nothing going on right now.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying that you understand, like good players, that when you play GPPs, the whole goal is to play well every day, and over the course of a year, 2 years, 3 years, whatever, some longer period, that you're putting yourself into position every day to win first place, and you're positively expected to be profitable on a long-term basis, on a day-to-day, but the realization of that is going to happen 2 or 3 days a year, and the difference is that you don't know which 2 or 3 days that's going to be.
Yep, exactly. Yep, 100% agree with that.
Right, you're rarely going into a day for MLB or NBA or even Sundays for NFL, which is obviously you only get so many weeks of that. You're not going in going, this is the week I win the Millie Maker. It's no, I'm gonna play 18 weeks of the Millie Maker, and if I play well, maybe once in my 14 lifetimes, maybe I could hit first once. Right?
I'll give that a mostly agree, because I definitely go into slates where I'm like, I'm going to win today. I know I'm going to win today. And I never do win those days, but I definitely have those days where I'm super confident. This is my day.
When are those days? To me, those days when I'm super confident are the days where I take a look at projections, I take a look at ownership, and I see clear spots where this team's going over-owned, this team's doing vastly under-owned. I'm playing 100 lineups. I'm playing quarter of the lineups. I'm playing this team that almost no one's playing, and you're Profit City, and then the chalk team, the over-owned team, right? Is Austin Meadows 2 home runs, and it's at 37% owned, and you're but that's not supposed to happen.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. It's those days where I feel like there's a real edge. I think couple days ago, the day slate where Max Scherzer got scratched, I was like, slam the Orioles. Like nobody's going to have the Orioles because they were going against Max Scherzer originally. Now they're going against John Lester. I feel like you can hit John Lester. You can get out of that. You're in Baltimore, and I just slammed in the Orioles, and I was like, I am going to crush this slate. And then of course the Braves put up like 15 runs, and a couple other teams did really well. The Orioles were fine. I think they had a few home runs, but yeah, those are the days where it's just like that the field is not going to get to where they should be on certain teams just based on the way things have developed, and sometimes it works out, but usually it still doesn't.
The problem with that though, like from most DFS players who play regularly, play like based on a percentage of their bankroll, right? They're like,
Right.
I'm going to play X percentage, and that moves up periodically. Now, obviously, DraftKings and FanDuel's dual like they stagger their contest offerings. Like certain days they have the super knuckleball. Some days it's the bat flip. Some day, I mean, like the contests vary. So maybe you decide to like, oh, I'm going to play more lineups into this contest versus that contest. But for the most part, we like, oh, I normally play $1,500 in MLB, and when I win, I go move up, and now it's 1,800 or now it's 1,200. You go like that, but we don't really do what we're supposed to do, and play more when we believe we have a bigger edge, and play less when we believe we don't have. Like when you go into a slate and you go, I don't see the leverage here. I don't see it seems like it's almost one of those days where you feel like just inverting ownership.
Right.
It's just like one of those, like, I don't see anything that's like completely out of whack, but I don't want to play the two chalk teams together, right? I don't want to play, the chalk construction in NBA. So it's like, okay, I'll just, whatever the ownership is, I kind of like inverse it. And it's like I play less of the high-owned teams and the more of, and then kind of spread it out. But really, on those slates, if everything is more efficient, we should be playing less volume. But the problem is that you don't necessarily know that until like an hour before the slate, and you've already entered everything, and the contests are filled, and you can't withdraw. And even if you got to that hour and like I have a humongous edge, and then you go to enter and all the contests are full, and it's like you can't get to the point where that happens. So you end up stuck. Do you feel like on a lot of slates, you're stuck in well, I guess I'm playing the slate because I'm playing the slate, and I'm going to just do the best I can, but you almost feel like I'm going to build about the same type of lineups as other sharp players are going to build, and just comes down to 2v2s, 3v3s. You take a look at, I take a look at results DB, and it's like, oh, kind of everyone that I respect, for the most part, is kind of on the similar teams and similar constructions. It just, obviously in baseball, on like a 15-game slate, there's a billion different combinations, and it just comes down to, did you play, like on that other slate the other night, other day I played the Orioles, and like, do I play DJ Stewart or Ryan McKenna? And it's like, what are those? Well, McKenna hits a home run and Stewart doesn't, and it's like, I look at my small field lineup, it's like, the difference between me coming in 12th and me coming in second was I had money for both. I just obviously Stewart projected slightly higher, and like, why not? Type of thing. And someone else had the 2% on McKenna versus the 7% on Stewart, and like, but like, to me, those decisions, like, there's no edge in that. There's just whatever happens. And how do you deal on a day-to-day basis where you feel as if there may not really, there may be an edge, like, as a whole, like the sharper players will always have an edge over the weaker players.
Yeah.
But intermixed, like, you don't feel like you're going to be that dramatically different from like 20 other people. Like, you're not going to be that. You're going to look at Awesomo's exposures and be like, I'm doing kind of the same stuff, or Brick and Rinpack and Buzzard and with the Colts, and you kind of like, well, but none of you have the same lineups. I mean, like, exactly, because you could build 8 million of them. Like,
there's just so many iterations.
Right, but how do you feel about like, is there a way to, or do you even consider like, well, I have more edge on this slate. Should I play like more or less? Should I play more in the 555? How would you do that?
No, I don't know. And I don't know if that's a leak in my game. It's something that I think about, like, because you hear sharp players talk about it all the time. You need to adjust your exposure based on the slate. But that's pretty hard to do because a lot of your a lot of the edge comes pretty late, so it's hard to adjust
Right.
to
Imagine NBA,
news
Neil.
giving you edge. Yeah,
Imagine like NBA. Like, how is that possible?
yeah.
Right?
And
Because
my
we see
assumption.
some slates in NBA where there's massive, someone
Oh
gets
yeah,
scratched 7 minutes before lock, and you're like no one's going to adjust enough.
yeah, yeah,
Like if it was 5 hours ago, sure, yeah, Kawhi's out. We all know. We
yeah,
start jamming in, Terrence Mann or some bullshit, right? But like
yeah.
right 7 minutes before lock, because even late swap is obviously a massive edge because people don't do
Yeah.
it enough.
Nope.
But imagine you knew on NBA which nights there would be those massive late swap edges versus
Yeah, I
when there
mean,
wouldn't be. Like,
if you knew, you could slam in entries everywhere you can find them. Uh, I think so. So the way I play, I guess I'm sort of the opposite of you in that I am not nitty at all. I mean, I also don't play, I guess, the 40,000 a night that some guys do. Um, but like, I'm gonna max out the contest basically every night and hope that an edge kind of reveals itself later on. I mean, that's how I
are
play.
you
So
maxing out the mid stakes also?
no, typically I'm just maxing out the whatever the biggest contest is on
Okay,
both
so
DraftKings and
that's all.
FanDuel.
So is that all? So you're not playing like a single entry, like you're not playing like on DraftKings like the
No,
121 or the 4 max 250. Are
I
you
do.
playing?
So I do adjust and play some of those some nights. So some days I only max out the big contests. Typically for me, so this is kind of bad practice, but after I've had a big win, the next day I'm going to play a little bit more. I know that there's not really any good reason for that. It's just like, hey, I'm on a heater. I'm going to keep it going. Also, I've got, I feel good, like I've got the bankroll. I feel safe. And then if I'm on kind of a losing streak, then I'm just like, yeah, I'm just going to max out these contests and that's it, because you kind of want to stop the bleeding at that point. So yeah, there's no real logic to what I play usually in terms of like which contests I play. But like yesterday and the day before, so I've had pretty good month. I lost a ton of money the past couple of days. Just like, man, I played way too much, got in over my head, pressed my luck, and did not work out for me.
But there's a value in taking shots. I'm not
Right,
against take like I come across as nitty, but I'm not like super. I mean, I'm not
right.
super nitty or anything like that. But
You're playing enough to make money. So
right. I'm
that's
not like the volume that I play is high enough, and the lineups that I play are not nitty.
oh
I
yeah,
could
no,
I consider I play more crazy lineups than anyone else
yeah.
because I'm looking to win first by myself. Especially in like the MMAs and the stuff where there's so much duplication and showdowns.
I saw that you were right there this week in MMA, right until the end. You were in
Yeah, but not.
tie for second.
I mean, what? It's someone from the main event fight is not going to score 60 points. I mean, come on.
Right, yeah.
Like
Seemed
I look
unlikely.
at people like, oh my god, you're gonna hold like, dude. Like
Yeah,
I'm rooting. Like I'm in another Discord. I'm rooting. I said before the fight, I said I'm rooting for an eye poke no contest.
yeah, right.
Right? Like I mean, like
Yeah,
yeah, it could happen. Right? I'm
yeah.
looking for a doctor stoppage. I'm looking for something or other. But I mean, I was in that position the MMA last year for the Millie Maker. I was tied for first with three people, so it was like 360 something, 390,000, and that was the Usman fight. And like I had I didn't have the main event, and Usman like the next lineup was like 94 points. So it's like that's at least a realistic shot that
Oh, for
a
sure.
main
Yeah,
event fighter. And then he started like clinching. So I'm like, they're not. This is the past scoring system. So those clinch you didn't get control time for. So I'm
you're
like,
over my head right now, just for the
oh,
record.
okay,
I don't
so
I don't do enough MMA to really know what you're talking about.
right. Oh, so the
With the
scoring
old
system and
scores.
everything.
Yeah,
No,
yeah.
but I'm saying like people were rooting for like, oh, if Usman, it's like, dude, based on like even just rudimentary projections, like Usman in because obviously and he faced Masvidal and also obviously those lineups are like 90 points behind also. So it's
Right.
like the odds of neither fighter scoring 90 points in a 5-round victory is
Right.
like 3%. It's like
Yeah.
so it's like, yeah, I do have a chance, but like 97% of the time, like I'm gonna get blown. I'm not only not gonna come in first or third or whatever. Because now we have all the ties that get you there,
Yeah, yeah.
and now you're in 57th place for nothing, right?
Still, you take those odds any day. 3% at
Sure, yeah, right. I had 3%
390,000 or
shot
whatever.
at 360,000 or whatever the hell it was.
Yeah.
But it's like I've been in that position, and I mean, because it's so linear, you get to see it. It's not like other sports where so much stuff is going on at the same time. But getting back to it is that I'm no problem, playing weird showdown lineups and weird MMA lineups, leaving 2,000 on the table or anything. But
Right.
when it comes to the contest selection, though, Like I'm big into looking at the payout structure, and although I do take shots at the large field stuff, like I'm less likely to 150, only because my rule of thumb. It may not be the best rule of thumb, but it's at least a rule of thumb for me. Is that I want to take a look at what 10th place is, and I don't want my total entries into the contest to be more than what 10th place is. So, like, if first place is 100,000 and 10th place is 1,000,
yeah,
like that's such a heavy thing. It's like I don't want to come in 10th place with one lineup and lose money.
yeah,
Right?
no,
Some people don't give it. Some people don't give a shit. But it's like, so how do I put in $1,350? Or like the bat flip, right? The bat flip when it's $18.
Oh yeah.
Right? That's $2,700 the max, and it's like $2,700 is like that's like 5th place.
Yeah, it's
right.
Yeah,
So
I'm not
like
a fan of the...
so you when you play that many lineups like that, you have to make sure even more that your lineups have first place equity, because now you're going to be even bleeding more money along the way. So that, to me, that's where I'm nitty. If the contests were flatter, I'd be much more inclined. Or when they run the mid, like sometimes the 88 one on DraftKings, I prefer, probably I'm the only one that does. I prefer when the $88 contest or the 66 or whatever, that mid stakes is 20,000 to first and not 50,000 to first.
Yeah,
Because
I'm not...
the payout structure, Neil, the payout structure when it's 50 is 50 and second place is 15,000.
Oh, I know. Yeah.
Right, like that drop from first to second. I'd rather a 20,000, 15, 10, 7,500, 5,000, 4,000, 3,000. Now I don't mind playing 5 lineups into that. Like, I'm not maxing it or anything, but I'll play 5 lineups. But when it's but those contests, it's like I look at that day and I go, well, I guess I'm not playing an $88 entry. Now I'm not playing that. I'm devoting, I'll play the 121 single entry. I'll play the 254 max. Like those are like staple contests for me. I'll play, if I'm playing a whole bunch of lineups into the large field, I'll also play 20 lineups into the moonshot, whatever. It's 3,000 the first, whatever. But that 3,000 at least is more than the amount of money that I'm entering that day. So it's like, I won't play contests where it's $800 the first for $5 because, yay, one lineup came in first and I lost money. I'm like, because what I also do is I only play unique lineups. I'm not sure. I may be one of do you do that as well? Okay. I haven't heard many people that do.
Yeah, I know. It seems like all the pros just make their 150 and enter it everywhere. But yeah, some days, I mean, I've been playing golf, just like trying to chase that sweat, and I never get it. But I end up making 320 PGA lineups because they keep making the contest with the big first place prize and low entry fee. So I'm like, I'm going to do it. I'm going to keep entering PGA, and somewhere I'm bound to get something through a 6 out of 6 that's competitive, and I never do. But I throw in, like, I've played 320 different unique lineups trying to chase it sometimes.
Right, but I feel like if you're playing regularly, that reduces your variance so much more than playing one like I see so many people that play one lineup into like 12 different single entry contests, and when they win, obviously all the contests are mostly correlated to one another. Yeah. Like it looks like, wow, you 50 extra money or whatever.
It's a nice screenshot, yeah.
Right, it's a nice screenshot, but like they're all related to one another. I view it in a way of like if I was entering into 15 single entry contests, I'll make a single entry type of lineup, one that leans more towards projection. I don't need as much of an ownership discount. I mean, you only have to beat 500 people or whatever. I'm just looking to win one of them. I want 15 shots at winning one of them rather than one shot at trying to win all 15 at once. To me, that makes more sense, especially since we don't have, 17 lifetimes to play DFS. Where those swings, like you don't mind that. So I think we're both on the same page for that.
Yeah, we are on the same page for that. I think that I would be more inclined to do the like just 150 set if I were playing those contests where it's not as much to first, because I don't want to have that regret. I think that's a big thing for me. Is like I never enter a contest where like the prize is 10,000 at most, unless it's like a day slate or a shorter slate where like that's the best you can do, and I think that's. Maybe it's not the best reason, but I just don't want to have that regret of like, man, I have that lineup in the wrong contest. So I basically only play contests that I'm going to be excited if I win. It's kind of my the way that I approach it.
I do the same thing. It's just that my threshold of excitement is lower than yours.
Right.
Mine is like as long as I could win more than like double what I put in for first place. And obviously, if you're playing a whole bunch of lineups, it's not like it's rare that like, oh, that's the one lineup and all your other lineups don't cash. But I mean, you do have some of those. You do have how why the hell did you play that guy? You know, like, dude, he was in 1 of 150 and he had 42 two home runs at 1% owned. And it's like, I didn't call that. They just happened to fit in that lineup.
Yeah, exactly. So I want to go back and say, yeah, $10,000. I'm not saying that $10,000 doesn't excite me. $10,000 would be disappointing to me if I would have made 50,000 if I had played that lineup in a different contest, I guess. So like that's where the threshold changes. Like $10,000, sure, I'll take $10,000 any day, but not if I made the mistake of playing that lineup in the wrong contest. And so because I played it in the wrong contest. Right, that's good. That's a good question.
You quote mistake. It's more unluckiness, not mistake.
Exactly. Yep, that's absolutely right.
Well, it's the same thing with like the Millie Maker. Like I typically don't play in NFL, like the Millie Maker. Like when I won the slant last year, like that lineup would have came in second in the Millie Maker for $150,000.
Right.
And people are like, aren't you upset that it would have come in? If that lineup was in the Millie Maker. And I'm like, what's there to be upset with? I literally was not even playing the Millie Maker.
Right.
Like at least you have the, like, if you're gonna do all uniques, like when I do like if I put in the 20 max in MLB, I'm doing 20 uniques there, and if I win, that's a $3,000 win. If that lineup was in the bat flip for 100,000, then it's like, oh well, I was playing both contests, and that lineup happened to be in the lower stakes one. Darn, that sucks. And I understand that type of regret. I don't mind that regret as much because at least I'm winning money. But like I have literally no regrets over that lineup would have won some other like people that play the mini max, which probably the mini max is probably the hardest contest to win because it's the biggest one. Like if you win the nickel on FanDuel with 100 and God knows how much, like when they run those contests, and you're like, well, if you had that in the Millie Maker, you would have won $1 million. It's like, well, were you playing the Millie? If I'm not playing it, I made the conscious choice of this is a negative EV contest. I play when there's satellite tickets or something like that. That I feel no regret that even if I would have come in first in the Millie Maker, I would have been like, why couldn't this be the week that I decided to play 120 lineups in the Millie Maker? It's like, dude, I would have never it would suck to go like, wow, there was one week, I think 2 years ago, I believe. I can't be sure of this. Okay. I believe a half an hour before lock, I swapped away from a lineup that would have won the Millie Maker.
Why can't you be sure of that? Because you don't remember what your lineup was exactly?
Not exactly. It was a slate, I think 2 years ago, where Rex Burkhead went off at like 2% ownership.
I remember that day because I had Rex Burkhead.
Okay, but it was also a day where Philip Lindsay went off.
Okay.
And Daniel Jones, the Giants stack was the winner, like Daniel Jones and something like it was a slate where there was a running essentially Rex, like it was like before lock, like one of the Patriots running backs was out, like inactive.
Yep.
So it made Burkhead more of a play. So I was shoving in Burkhead into lineups, and one of the lineups I had Burkhead and Lindsay already in there, and I swapped out of like Lindsay to pay up. So I'm like, I already have Burkhead and his ownership's going to start going up now. Not that much. I'm going to take out Lindsay, put in like a 6K running back and switch a wide receiver. Like I did something like that where I took out Lindsay from a lineup and it was a Daniel Jones lineup. And Daniel Jones, that Giant stack was like 1% owned. And I was playing the Millie Maker that week. And that lineup, that specific lineup came in like, I think 16th place.
Oh, wow.
Like that exact line, but that's a lineup that had a running back that only had like 12 points while Lindsay had like 28 that week. And I'm looking at, if I didn't make this swap, I think I would have won first by like 7 points or something.
Well, it's good to not know, I guess, in that case.
Well, but I'm saying, I obviously I remember that now.
Yeah.
And it kind of, I'm still prone to the emotion of like, I think I had it, but I didn't. But like, the logical side of me is like, well, the decision that I made at the time to switch that lineup, was that the correct decision to do? And I go, if I didn't know how the slate played out, like I still would have done that. Like you
got to keep making those same decisions,
right?
They don't work out sometimes.
Right.
I mean, it's brutal when it's for $1 million when it would have been a Millie Maker winner. That's kind of the, other than that big exception, it's like you keep making that right decision over the long haul. It's going to be, you're going to make more money making that decision. Now, not making $1 million one time for most players, that's going to be, it's going to wipe that whole thought process out. But in general, yeah, I mean, you got to keep making those. But I still tilt all the time about when I made a decision that I'm pretty sure was the right decision, and then it goes wrong. I still tilt about
Well,
that. So I think
but I tilt
that's
about,
human nature.
to me, the only things that I really tilt about are things that I can control.
Yeah.
Like I'll tilt about uh, fucking up a CSV. I'll tilt about
Yep.
not having enough uniques in a showdown and be like, why the fuck did I look in and I see I'm playing 100 lineups and like 80 lineups I have like they're 40 plus dupes and I'm like, how the fuck did that happen? Like, did I
Right.
fuck something up? Like, to me, I'm like, it has nothing to do with the results. I think, didn't you tweet like a week ago or something like that you accidentally had like the wrong pitcher in like more than 10% of your lineups?
Oh yeah. Yep. That happened to me several times.
Right.
So apparently I've been kind of making a lot of bad decisions and still getting lucky this month. But yeah, it's on using Fantasy Cruncher. For some reason, there's some issue there with the when there's a double header. So like pitchers from both games will make it into Fantasy Cruncher, the pool of players, and show them as being starters. And I, don't do enough research, I guess, to figure out who's the actual starter. So if I don't notice that I have 2 Mets pitchers in my player pool, I go out and I play 14% Steven Matz or something like that. But that wasn't even the worst. I think there was another pitcher that I had like 50% of a pitcher, might have been Max Scherzer, who didn't play like earlier that week. So yeah, I was starting to get pretty tilted with that.
But didn't you win on that slate? Didn't you tweet out? It's like, I hope no one analyzes my exposures tomorrow.
Yep. that was it. That was a unique one because I definitely had, I think even on top of Steven Matz, I think I had some batters who also weren't playing. So that was extremely lucky to make it through on that one, to get, some lineups that didn't have any of those dead players in them and push one through.
Yeah, but to me that's worth tilting over. Like, just like you burned, like you basically just burned half, I mean, not all your lineups,
Yep.
but you burned, like, it's just like, up, you like 10%
Yep.
of your lineups just got, you might as well just flush it down the toilet.
Thanksgiving last year, I think I played 70%. I think it was DeAndre Swift. It was some running back who was ruled out, but I just screwed up my CSV, and I still don't even know how I did exactly, but I ended up with 70% exposure to a running back who wasn't playing, and I was heavily exposed that day because I was shortly after the Millie Maker, so I was, feeling good, playing a lot of money. It's all, it's all going to taxes anyway, so just got to keep playing it all, which I don't think that logic actually makes sense. The whole, like, if you're up a lot, you should play more at the end of the year because you're going to have to pay taxes on everything, because it kind of cuts both ways. But I follow it anyway because I want to play more. And I played a lot that slate and had 70% DeAndre Swift or whoever the running back was that wasn't playing. And yeah, that's about the biggest deal. Like when I figured that out, when you go in to look at your lineups and you're like, ooh, this one looks good, and you click on it and you see there's an inactive player in there, that kind of like the goes to the pit of my stomach that I'm not going to have a good day. It's kind of a sinking feeling in your stomach when you see that.
Have you ever had it that you thought you saved your CSV and you uploaded the same one twice?
Yep.
Right.
I think that's what happened.
To me, that's a common one where I have all dummy lineups in. I did that for 1 week in NFL. Thank God that lineup cashed. Because I play higher volume for NFL, and you cut and paste, right? You move it over, you put in your DK entries.csv or whatever the hell it is, and then
Yep.
you forgot to save it, and then it's there, and you upload it, and then after that one occurrence, what I do as a I do it every single slate. Anytime I upload to either site, I load it up on my phone to make sure that I see all the lineups that come in.
Yep.
And then I
typically do that too.
Right. And in Excel, there's this warning message that comes up. Maybe I have an old copy of Excel or something that it says like the formatting is whatever. There's some yellow bar that comes up, and it only comes up when you save. So it says it's saved, but it didn't keep all the format, and which I don't care. It's a CSV. But I know that if I see that bar, that means it did save, because I've done it multiple times where I'm uploading technically the same CSV that I just downloaded, and lock hits, and you're like, why do I have 170 of the same lineup in every in every contest. And
So do you see that in your roto tracker when you look at your percent buckets? Because I feel like sometimes I look at my roto tracker, the 1% bucket thing, and now this year especially, because I've made those kinds of mistakes a few times this year, I'll see a big spike in the middle, and that's where I accidentally locked in 200 of the same lineup.
right. I
It's
mean, with
hate
larger
that.
sample size, those things will get diminished. But in
Yeah,
a
yeah, right.
smaller sample size, yeah, you'll see.
Yeah,
Like, yeah, you play 7 million lineups in the 42nd percentile. It's like, yeah,
yeah,
I remember that
exactly.
day.
Yep,
I remember that day
exactly.
well. Uh, what leads you? Because I think people may ask. It's like you accidentally played pitchers and batters that weren't in the that weren't even like you said, like you didn't even do the research to know what pitcher was even pitching. Like
Right.
I'm like I'm a numbers person. I build I don't need to do research because it's all there for me. Uh, how do you get into the position of like not knowing that information? Like so do you go into a slate and just uh first off, are you building your own model? Are you using your own projections? And
Okay.
so
Yeah.
like
So
I think people's question would be is like how because if you're building your own model, like you would know what the picture. I mean, like you would know that
oh yeah,
that would
right.
come in through
You'd
some
have to.
data source or something. Like so, how do you get to the point where multiple times like it's a
Yeah.
half an hour over the
So
slate and you accidentally have batters that aren't even in lineups?
yep. So I used Osmo projections through Fantasy Cruncher. So I used the Fantasy Cruncher optimizer on Osmo. And so my process isn't the same every day. And I mean, even if I have the time, it's not the same every day. I think those were days that I didn't really have the time to go through and, adjust pitcher exposure, that kind of stuff too much. So, and I often don't. Like a lot of times with pitchers, I just like set it at a max of 30% or 40% uniformly across the pitchers, unless I see a pitcher that I really like relative to their projected ownership. Um, but yeah, so I think it's because I use Osmo's projections and because I use Fantasy Cruncher, I'm definitely not going through and checking individual pitchers
Right. So also
typically.
most projections would have obviously the game one pitcher or game two pitcher, like still with the projection, but for that game. Because it would
Exactly.
be the type of thing that if you select the slate or whatever, like you're still getting a number there. Because
Right. And
if you're
typically,
doing it if you're doing it with your own model, like you would see for that slate that like that guy would have a zero projection anyway. So the
yep.
worst case scenario is he's still in the player pool, but he'd never make a lineup, so it wouldn't
Yeah.
matter.
And typically with Osmo's projections, you don't run into those issues because they take players out of the pool. Sometimes with baseball, I find that I have to go in and do it manually, take out some players, but we don't need to get into that. But typically those, players will be removed if they're not starting, like they're not going to make the player pool. I think there's just one exception in Fantasy Cruncher, and I don't know if it's an Osmo site issue or a Fantasy Cruncher issue, but with double headers, players will make it into the pool who are not actually starting, and then so it's on me to, I guess, be more careful in figuring out when there are double headers. But sometimes I think that was the day that I had 15 minutes to make all of my FanDuel and DraftKings entries. So I'm really quickly looking through the Osmo Top Stacks tool, trying to figure out if there's any real edge for any of the stacks, and making my entries really quickly. So when I don't have the time, sometimes you just kind of miss that kind of thing.
So you're more similar to me that you're using publicly available
Oh yeah.
everything.
Yep.
So like
Every,
it's the same time. I could make my own models. I could probably make these tools, but I could probably never make them as good as what's available. Now,
yep.
obviously, I'm using more roto grinders and Derek Hardy type of stuff. But I mean,
Yep.
I look at Osmo stuff all. I mean, like to me, my approach is that if I'm using publicly available stuff. So like this shows to me. I think me and you, since you because a lot of times a lot of the guests that I have on here build their own model. So like it's
Right.
so for me to say like, well, how do you build lineups? You have your own proprietary process. You have your own
Yep.
model. You have your own automation. You have your own simulations and okay. So
It's not that
unless you're
helpful,
going to
yeah, to the
explain
average
that
player. Yep.
exactly what you do there, which you're not. Like
Yep.
it's going to be different. Me and you
Yep.
are using like, dude, you can subscribe to all these places, and even if you want to aggregate them, and like, this is
Yep.
all information that is known,
Yep.
and we could still
Absolutely.
build lineups based on that information that
Yep.
are way higher expected value than other people's lineups. So, like, when people say it's like, well, you can't win with, what's the point of projections? Because if everyone else has those projections, where's there an edge? Like, to
Right.
me, the edge is in knowing that other people are looking at what exactly that you're looking at,
Yeah,
and
that's
then
true too.
deviating from that. Because I find, yeah, and you probably find on Osimo also. I mean, because I could say it about roto grinders for sure. That's why I'm not a big fan of doing the pre-lock type of shows. Do I play
Right.
this guy or that guy? Those
Yeah.
types of
Yeah.
things that even on any place that offers projections, that people still view them as predictions
Right.
and not a range of outcomes, and they go, well, Eloy Jimenez shouldn't be $2,500, so I got to jam him into every lineup. And it's like it's a 15 game slate, and if he's going to be 20% owned,
Yeah.
does he make the winning GPP large field lineup often enough that you should be playing him in as a one-off at
Right.
20% ownership? And the answer most likely is no. Yet,
Right.
yet in a vacuum, you'd say he's one of the best players on the slate. And like
Yep.
that the difference of lineups, not players. Like I look at your exposures, and I just look at your exposures just so I can see what types of lineups you're building. Like whether or not you're
Right.
above or below the field, I just want to see, what
Yep.
types of lineups you're building. Like it's very, you may be on different teams or different, up or down depending on, the projection, and the obviously ownership projections may be different from site to site. I adjust them
Yep.
myself, personally, because I'll hear stuff throughout the day, and I'll go, "There's no way this team is going to be this low owned, or there's no way
You
this team is
adjust.
going to be
Oh,
this high owned." And I start adjusting because I need the numbers to be at least somewhat accurate, because I'm going to be
right.
building lineups based on those numbers.
Yep.
Uh, but for the most part, like you won the Millie Maker, you win NBA, MLB. I mean, you play large field contests where you need high scores. These aren't
Yep.
80-man contests where you could pretty much play the best plays with it and then have a 2v2 and
Right.
win, right?
Yep.
Like that's a whole different type of game. Like I consider large field and small field to almost be like stud versus hold'em. Like it looks the same, but it really isn't.
Yep.
Uh
Very different.
that
Yeah. I mean,
that
I
you could still be a profitable player simply by, like you said, showing up 15 minutes before a slate and
yep.
building 150 lineups.
Those are often my most profitable days, or the days that I don't really have the time, but I just kind of like I know about what I want exposures to be, and I set them accordingly. Yeah. I mean, everything that I use is publicly available. Most of it you have to pay for. So
Right,
you
but
do
still
have to.
public. I
So
mean,
for
still
me,
a vet, like nothing that only you have and no one else does.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, and I subscribe to all the sites. I mean, not quite all the sites. I definitely use Osimo primarily. I use their tools for baseball, especially. I'm mostly using Osimo. I'm using the Top Stacks tool, the Top Pitchers tool, and using that to craft my exposure percentages in Fantasy Cruncher, typically. And then I subscribe to Roto Grinders. I use Roto Grinders for both the weather page, the Kevin Roth weather page, and then also Weather Edge. I really sometimes find that pretty useful. And yeah, so I use tools from various sites, but for the most part, yeah, just using Osmo's projections and adjusting exposures to try to get unique lineup sets, unique stack sets. Yeah,
But even
it's all
using,
available.
right, but even using like roto grinders, like there's a value to going, let's see what roto grinders projects. Let's see what the
Oh
bat
yeah,
has, and you go, oh, Osimo, like based on the Osimo projections, this guy doesn't project as well, but in the bat, like people are going to be playing Drew Smiley today. Like it may not, like your projections may not have Smiley, may not have him
right.
horrible, but not as high. Like those types of
Yeah.
pitchers, those
And that's one of
SP2.
those things. Yeah. So if you have more time, if I had more time, so DFS is not my 9 to 5. I have a full-time job, so I don't really have the time. But I feel like there is a lot of value to just running the same sims via other optimizers and their projections and seeing who you get a lot of. So yeah, if I had the time, I would for sure do that with roto grinders, with Saber Sim. I don't know all the different optimizers that are publicly available, but there are plenty that also have projections in them. And I don't know if that's how. I really don't understand how ownership projection is done exactly. I know it's like you scrape sites for mentions. I
No,
don't know if
no,
that's
no.
a
I mean, you could
component of
do
it.
ownership projections just with the ownership projections are going to be very geared towards the projections that you use.
Okay.
So like like Alsimo's ownership projections are going to be based around his projections. So like if a guy projects well, it's going to project for higher ownership, but on another model, maybe lower. So to me, that's the difference of you could use an optimizer. Like I view optimizers as tools, not as like
Oh yeah, for
like
sure.
I could load in Alsimo's projections into lineup HQ on Roto Grinders and make the same lineups that like if you put in the same settings into Fantasy Cruncher, I can make literally the same exact 150 lineups that you make.
Right.
But as long as I have the same numbers in here with the ownership and everything in there, there's a usefulness in bringing in that projection and then running. Like I could run 300 lineups in lineup HQ, and then I set a liberal max. Like as long as I know the highest owned of a batter or highest owned of a pitcher, I go. I think this hitter is going to be 24% owned. So I set the max on any hitter, 24. And I think Yu Darvish is going to be 45% owned. So I set the max so I can only get 45% Yu Darvish. But then it starts going to the next, and then you run 300 lineups and you go, okay, based on this outsider's projected set, this is how often I get way more of this guy, but if I use Cardi's bat projections, I only get 3% of this guy. But if I use Alsimo's, I get 12%. And if I use these other projections, if I aggregate them, I get 8%. Like, and then you could see, and it's like, well, Roto Grinders projects them to be 8% owned. Alsimo projects them to be 14% owned because it's all based on the projections. And then you find some middle ground, and then you go, and then 6:30 comes around and some late night lineup, and it's like, some cheap guy is in the Angels lineup, right, or something like. Okay, so now you got to change that. It's not that much work. It's just kind of common sense. I don't have to be. I'm not looking to be exact. I'm just looking to be about.
The Roto Grinders optimizer. I don't know what it's called. What is the name of the Roto Grinder? Lineup HQ. That's right. I do know that. Does it have projections, ownership projections built in?
Yeah.
Like, can you see? So you can put Alsimo projections into Lineup HQ and still see the Roto Grinders ownership projections with what Alsimo's. Oh, okay, that seems really useful to me. I didn't realize that it had that in there.
Well, you'd have to merge them in Excel first. Okay. You can't upload on Lineup HQ. You can't upload. You can only upload one file, so the file will include the projected ownership in it. So it's like, so obviously you take it from Alsimo and then replace the column from the Roto Grinders projections. Merge.
You say that it's based on what you would get using that site's optimizer, but I feel like there are times with Alsimo at least that I'll get like 40% Evan Fournier, and they'll only have an ownership projection of like 2% or 3% or something. So I feel like there are outliers sometimes where it's not entirely based on what their projections would give me. I feel like
but I mean, it's also based around like what the correlation between lineups are. Like if everyone's paying up here, and like in NBA especially, everyone's going to pay up at center and power forward, which means Evan Fournier, although he's a good value, like is not going to be nearly as owned. Although he probably people are playing up at power forward and center too much. Right. So that's why you're getting so much more Fournier, because you're kind of trying to do the opposite construction. And Fournier just happens to be the top point per dollar. So unless you limit him, he's going to start jamming in. And you look and you see the point per dollar value is not that dramatically great. Like there's a whole different value. Like when we have the 3K guy playing point guard for 38-minute type of values, you don't mind getting 97% of that guy. Right, but Evan Fournier, you don't want 40% of him, and you don't want to Google him.
Right, very true, very true. Yeah,
but I mean, when you even in 15 minutes, like to me, because I don't take that long to build lineups either. Like now, obviously, I do a show every day at 11 o'clock in the morning, so I'm at least taking a very bare basic look at the day's slate to begin with. I mean, a lot of my show is reviewing and then talking about strategy, especially at 11 o'clock in the morning. We don't even know what the confirmed starting lineups for MLB and NBA. It's worthless. I mean, NBA.
Sure.
I mean, at 11 o'clock in the morning, don't even bother.
It's funny how much my process has changed, because I used to watch the Alsimo morning show, and then I would watch the show before their Live Before Lock show, and then I'd watch Live Before Lock. And then last year was like, man, there's really no point in doing that because everything changes so much. So it's like
In
you're
NBA,
spending an hour. And yeah,
MLB maybe
NBA.
not as much, but
Yep.
NBA is almost like, dude, I'll wait till 6:30, half an hour before, like, and even that is sometimes like we'll have some at 11. I'll do a show at 11 o'clock in the morning, and people are like, "Can you go over today's NBA slate?" And I'm like, "Really? There's no point in doing that." It's like,
Yeah. I mean,
okay, based on what's currently here, here's the value play. Here's what most people are going to do. That, and we talk about it. It's like, okay, if people are going to do this, maybe we should do that. Let's see what the combinations are. If I'm going to play this guy on one side, then play the other guy on the other side, and then like 1:30 injury report. 3 guys are out, 1 guy are sitting.
Yeah.
So now everything flips, and it's like the guy that I mentioned in the morning that was a value play is going to be 1% owned. And then at the 5:30 injury report, 2 guys are out and 3 guys are sitting. So why are people even bothering?
it just seems like a really inefficient use of your time to spend a lot of time on NBA in particular, more than like an hour before lock, because so much changes, and it changes how much you're going to get of players. It changes their ownership projections. Obviously it changes projections for players, so like everything changes really quickly in that last hour, and then even after lock. But obviously you can't wait until after lock to start. So
right.
I usually start.
Well, you can.
Hour.
Hey, Neil, you can if you like. Sometimes we have like the 7 o'clock game, and you're not playing anyone in that game.
Just leave it out. Yep,
right.
I
Just
do
leave
that
it
sometimes.
out. I learned that. I learned that from Alex. I learned that in my dummy lineup, I will always have players from later games. So in the worst case scenario that I don't get my CSV uploaded in time, I could still make correlated lineups. Like in MLB, I'll have a 5-3 from the late games.
Right.
Or something. Or an NBA, it'll be like, well, if I'm not playing the Indiana-Memphis game much, like, what's the worst case scenario? I miss out on like Ja Morant or something. I mean, like, so it's like, oh, well, now I've given myself a half an hour to at least correct whatever errors. Now, and obviously in NFL, you could still do it with the 4 p.m. games. It's limited.
Yeah, but you're missing a lot of the.
Yeah, you're missing a lot of it. But what's the worst case scenario? You never get stuck in a position where everything locks. Because sometimes you make dummy lineups. Like in MLB, I'll make a dummy lineup today, and maybe someone is out of the lineup. And it's from a 7:05 Eastern game, and it's in my dummy lineup. And let's say I have a CSV error. Well, that guy's going to get now I can't swap out of that. So that's the worst case scenario. So I have a 10 o'clock hitter in there. So to me, even in football, like I don't want to have a running back that's inactive. Oh, in my dummy lineup, I'd rather have all the 4 p.m. games, if anything, than have a 0.
I mean, it's definitely best practice to build your lineups with the later players, and I've been doing it more and more. I still sometimes don't because I don't think of it as I'm just trying to get my entries in. I'm like, okay, I'm just going to set a lineup, and I don't give it much thought. But at least especially during the day games, because I'm like, I might forget that there's a slate. I might miss lock because I just forgot that there was a day slate that I'm playing.
Have you ever forgotten that you were playing on multiple sites? It's happened.
No.
It's the main reason why I don't like playing on both sides. That you spend all your time, like it's 6:30, and you've entered 150 on DraftKings and 150 on FanDuel, and you're fooling around because now there's a new line. Like the Angels have a new lineup, or the Dodgers, and it's like, oh, Franmil Reyes was scratched, and now you're moving stuff around in your DraftKings stuff, and it's 7:02. And you're like, okay, I got all my lineups done. I'm good. I'm gonna upload this to DraftKings. Okay, I could breathe and relax. And 7:05 hits, and you're like, oh shit, I forgot I had FanDuel lineups.
I miss FanDuel lock all the time, but it's not because I forget that I'm playing there. It's because news comes out so late, and I typically have a lot more money on DraftKings, so I care more about perfecting my DraftKings lineups than even getting out of the 150 set on FanDuel, unless I have like an injured player in my lineup. That's a little bit different. But yeah, I definitely push my luck a little bit too much sometimes, where I'm like working on DraftKings stuff until 4 minutes before lock, and then give myself 4 minutes to try and make all of my FanDuel stuff, and get unlucky a little bit with the CSV or something and miss lock. Yeah, it's definitely something that happens to me, but it's not because I forget. It's just because I push my luck a little bit.
What do you sweat? The biggest sweat in DFS is the CSV upload on FanDuel at 7:04 p.m.
I hate that. Yeah.
Because you have to press enter and it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's like it's
Yep.
doing this, and it's like I'm looking at the corner of my computer screen going,
Come
705,
on.
please no 705.
You got this. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Definitely have had that issue where I'm like, I press it at 7:04, I press the button, and still I don't get any through because, yeah,
Well, and we also had that
upload.
issue in NBA season. I got lucky, I guess, when Paul George was scratched like 40 seconds before lock.
Yeah.
If you remember that, and I got my lineups in, and it gave me because I was doing it. I wasn't doing a CSV. I was doing it on my phone because I only had one line. I was only playing like cash games or something that day.
Just like the swap player thing.
Right, the swap player thing, and I went and once I saw it because Paul George was like the highest owned whatever at shooting guard. Yep. I swapped them out. I did it. I mean, I just did I didn't even do global player swap. I mean, I just opened up the screen, swapped out George and some other guy, and did a 2v2. Pressed enter, and I saw that and I pressed enter, and like 3 seconds later, lock hit, and then it gave me an error message and still showed my old lineup. And then I tried to reload the screen, and it wouldn't reload the screen.
I think the same thing happened to me that
right,
day.
and I'm sitting there, and I think a lot of people were sitting there for like good 5 to 7 minutes, not being able to even load the live playing screen. And then after that, then I saw people in the RotoGrinders Discord. It's like I didn't get my swap in. It didn't hit. And then at like 7:08 or whatever after lock, I reloaded my FanDuel app and I saw that Paul George wasn't in. My because it's when you're playing, like if you're playing cash games on FanDuel, like I'm playing in like 370 contests. So like when it swaps out, it has to swap out of all the contests.
Oh, right.
Or something like that. So it's not like just a simple, like I know it's in. So like I was nervous. Obviously he ended up being like 70% owned with a 0.
Right.
But like to me those are the sweats and the tilt.
Oh yeah. I mean, that should be the only tilt that I feel. And I mean, I tilt when I know that I shouldn't. Like, so I'm focusing very much on like the last game of the slate. Like what happens in the last game that's going on. I end up tilting a lot, just being like, man, that one home run took me out of first place. When really it's like, well, there was a whole day of like so many things happen throughout the day. But I'm focusing on the last thing that happens, of course, which is, I know that it's illogical, but as a DFS player, I feel like I can't help it. Maybe you're a little bit calmer than I am in that sense, but I end up tilting those things. But yeah, no, I agree with you that those are the things that we should be tilting.
Right.
The mistakes that we make.
To me, CSV tilt is the only tilt.
Yeah.
Right. To me, there's nothing else, because what else? You already made your decision. Because the thing is, it's not like oh, I should have done this or this. It's like, no, you made all the decisions, and you still couldn't get. I mean, you still couldn't get it in. Or you do a late swap. Sometimes on Lineup HQ, like on a late swap situation, I didn't like curtail. Like, this happens in NBA more than anything. That you didn't like trim the players and the projections update, and you end up like late swapping and getting like 17% of like Quinn Cook, or like some like 11-point player, because it's the only way to fit. Like once late swap, like you forget to like decrease the salaries, right? Like the type of thing where it needs a certain position, because like half of your players are locked into lineups. And now you're like, I want to get as much of Marcus Morris as possible. And then in order to get all of that, you have to start taking like $3,200 players, and like and then you do that, and you don't look. And then you upload it, and then the 10:30 game comes around, it's 12 o'clock at night. Oh, I got a lineup doing well, and you look and you go, why the fuck is the third point? Why is Giannis's brother in this lineup? Right? You take like, it's because he projected for 9 points, and the only way to fill on that late swap is to play. Or it's one of those things where it's like there's only 3 eligible small forwards. So it's like if you don't play that guy, you have to play like some 11th guy off the bench. And if you don't pay attention to that, I've ended up with lineups. I'm sitting on FanDuel going, I guess I'm taking a 3 points from this. I hope he gets garbage time. And to me, that's the tilt, because it's like, this is something that I could have prevented from happening.
Yeah.
I didn't choose to. If I chose to do that and he put up 3 points, I could live with that. But it's something that I look at a lineup and I go, if I had any brain cells, like there's no way that
Yeah.
this
Oh, yeah.
lineup gets made.
Yeah.
Like that's when it's like that's because that's something I could control. So to me
Right.
that's CSV tilt.
So I want to go back to, so you said you forgot to lower the salary in late swap, and I'm wondering what you mean by that.
Let's say you want like lower the minimum threshold of set
Minimum threshold.
like for instance, if you're building a lot of lineups, because we get these things that happen because we have a lineup HQ help channel.
Yep.
So let's say I'm going to give you a very extreme situation.
Okay.
So you're doing a late swap optimizer or whatever, rebuild, whatever you want to call it,
Yep.
depending on what product you use. There's 2 late games. It's the 2 10:30 West Coast games, and those are the only games that are left.
Yep.
And you have let's say you have Paul George and Dennis Schroeder in your lineups because it's the Lakers and the Clippers or something. Like,
Yep.
well, that equals a certain amount of salary. So like,
Yep.
if you have Paul George and you're like, oh, Paul George now gets ruled out, and it's like, well, he's in the small forward spot, and you're like, I want to play as much Kawhi as possible, and Kawhi is only eligible at shooting guard, and most of your shooting guard spots are already taken, and your guard utilities are already taken. It's like,
Yep.
well, I want to get him in all the lineups that I can get him in, and then whoever else is in the remaining lineup, whatever that guy is. So that's why you could get a 3K guy in those lineups. But then let's say you don't want that, and it's like I want to get as much Marcus Morris or some Terrence Mann, but that'll require you to leave like $4,000 of salary on the table in order to get that late swap in, because there's no other expensive players at any positions that could fit in those lineups. But you've set your threshold at minimum at 49.5. Well, now lineup HQ is going to say couldn't rebuild, it'll give you an error saying I could rebuild 38 of these 100, but I couldn't rebuild the other ones. And people are like, well, why doesn't it rebuild? Like, well, the instructions you've given it, like it can't it can't get Kawhi in your lineup because you don't have the position, and you're requiring it to spend almost all of your salary, and there's no one to spend it on. So what do you do? Right? I mean,
so I never used there is a set minimum salary on in Fantasy Cruncher as well. I never used that feature, so I guess that's where I didn't totally understand.
But some of those builders, like if you set it to, you need at least 4 unique players, and it's like, well, how? Maybe it doesn't get to. Maybe once you have to do the late swap, it can't. Certain lineups just like there aren't as many combinations because obviously after the first game you have, and it's 11 game slate, you'll be able to do it. But I'm talking about like right at the end. There's only 1 or 2 games left, and you're trying to swap out stuff. It's like you have to make sure these global settings are like not constraining enough. In order for you to do that.
I think that's a big thing that people miss with late swap as well. In addition to just not doing it, I think people don't realize that you kind of need to loosen your settings a little bit after lock, because if you leave all the same constraints, you're really forcing it to make some bad lineups. Sometimes you're going to end up with, not using anywhere near all of your salary and not playing your best plays. So yeah, I think that's it's an important thing to do.
In MLB, do you use late swap at all in MLB?
I try not to. Like I would prefer not to. I do sometimes if there is if the lineup hasn't come out before lock, then I will sometimes. But yeah, I definitely prefer not to, because I don't want to undo all of the work that I put in before lock. And I feel like with MLB, the way I set max exposure, I'm a little bit more concerned about that. So I'm more likely to just do like 1-for-1 player swaps in MLB than NBA.
Right. Like my instance, a lot of times I have to determine whether or not, like typically, like you said, it's when you're building based on a projected starting lineup and not a confirmed one. Yep. And then you see, oh, Matt Beattie is in and not Chris Taylor. And then you have to get to then you have to swap. Like, to me, I don't know about you. My order of priority is to keep the correlation and not worry about the projection, unless it's at a position where I just can't. It's not gonna. I'm not available to. Like if I have Chris Taylor in a shortstop position because he's outfield and shortstop eligible, and then Matt Beattie's in and he's only outfield eligible, and now the Dodgers don't have they don't even have a shortstop eligible in their lineup. It's like, well, that turns into Javi Baez. That turns into whoever. Basically, I just do global player swap, and I go, who's the highest projected guy? And if this lineup is, instead of 5-1-1-1, ends up being 4-1-1-1-1-1, and then that's just the way, because I'm not going to leave the guy in there not playing. So, but I'm less inclined to go into like a late swap tool and start rejiggering like all of my lineups at once.
Yep, and I agree with that. I definitely prefer not to use late swap with MLB. I still do sometimes, and usually when I do, like I said, like if I have if I've set it for 5-3, my swaps to be 5-3, I'll change that to 5-2 or just get rid of the secondary stack maybe.
Do you play when you make a 150 set? Do you do just like I'm playing 5-3 today, and just like all of your lineups are like that?
Depends how much time I have, and depends if I'm on my phone, because I think it might be just an issue of me not totally understanding how to use Excel on my phone. I don't really know how to.
Are you telling me you build 150 sets sometimes on your phone?
I do. Like if I'm not at home, I do for sure. Yeah, I use the. I actually, I heard. Bro, I just watched your interview with him, and he mentioned that he does the same thing. I use the late swaptimizer feature if I'm doing that. So that's. When I use my phone, I do it with my late swaptimizer feature. But if I'm on my computer, then oftentimes I'll set, different. I'll do 4-4s, I'll do 5-3s, I'll do 4-3s, 5-2s.
But a mix of all. You're not
based on the slate.
Right, but you're not just locking into, because a lot of people ask that question, like what construct. Like I get the similar question. How many of a certain team do you have? It's like, well, it depends on what lineups you're making. I mean, like there's no like I think a lot of what and we see on multiple sites, like for Awesemo, that people get too bogged down in optimizer settings, not realizing that it's a calculator that, like, whatever you want it to do, it'll do. Just there's no magic settings, and there's like the difference between most of what an optimizer does is for diversification and not for strategy. Your head is for, like, when I put in yesterday that I want to play like way more of the Phillies and way more of the Reds and less of the Boston-Toronto game, like that's strategy. But like how many of one team I have or something like that, like that's just a matter of diversification. It just comes down to, like, I'm building, like yesterday I built 150 lineups because it was a super knuckleball, and why not? I'll throw $750 in. Yeah. And it comes down to, like, I start building, so I build the first 150 set, and I see that I'm like, if I play all these heavily on these teams, like a lot of these lineups look the same, right? So it's like I love these lineups, but from a diversification standpoint, it's like even doing 2v2s or 3v3s, they still come out that, like, well, like, based on the pricing and the positions, it's like, well, the Reds always show up with the Red Sox, or like because of how the positions and the salaries work out. It's like, yeah, I have a lot of but like all my Red Sox are with one team, or with most of one team, so I don't want that, right? Because I want to be more diverse, because I'm playing 150. I want to reduce my variance. I don't want to just like, I need to hope that this other team also does well with them, or this pitcher, right? Because typically it happens to pitchers, because it's like all the cheap stacks are going to be with the double ace builds, right?
Yep.
Right. So, but you don't. But maybe I want lineups, but I have the cheap stack with a super expensive 3-man and a medium level pitcher, a 7K pitcher, but it actually projects lower than some other lineups, but it gives me more diversification with the amount of exposure I have. So I don't mind giving up a little bit of projection to reduce my variance. Like, but that's all diversification. There's no like, how many teams like, it's a 15-game slate. How many teams do you play? I'm like, well, sometimes I play 8, and sometimes I play 22, and sometimes I play a little bit of this and a little bit of that. Like, I'll run through lineups, and there may be 5 teams on the slate that I could run lineups 100 times and not get a single stack of these teams. So I don't play them. So I mean, like, so like it's, and then there's some slates where there's a lot of stacks that come very close to each other, and it's like, do I want to X any of these out? Maybe I end up with 2 of these stacks. Maybe I do end up with that. And
So I
and it's there's no hard answer of like, well, how many teams do you play? It was like, as long as you're
no,
building plus EV lineups, like, feel free to play a
yeah,
different team in every. If I'm playing 20 lineups, play a 5-man stack of 20 different teams if you want. But if
right,
you believe that let's say you believe 2 or 3 stacks are going dramatically under-owned, well,
yep,
you would want to have more. Why wouldn't you want to have more of that? Does having that 20th team and being over diverse being worth not doubling down on the edge that you think that you have?
yeah. I think I feel like a lot of people want there to be a magic button. Like these are like you were saying, the settings. They want it to be like, this is what you want to do. You want to play this percentage of the teams on the slate. And I feel like one thing that good players do is play to the slate. Like you don't play the same settings every slate. You look at which teams are going to be at what ownership, like which stacks are going to be played what percentage of the time, and you adjust according to the information that you have. Every slate, you kind of have to look at it differently.
And two
And I
people
feel
could
like
look
that
at the
was,
same information and come up with different.
oh, exactly. Yeah.
Right. I could
Right.
look at this and then go like, there are sometimes I go through results DB and it could be two people having the similar idea in the opposite ways.
Right.
Right. It's like it's one of those situations like I think yesterday, like for instance on yesterday, I mean for people are listening, who knows when, like Mike Minor and the Chicago White Sox. Like
Yep.
to me, that seemed like a side type of situation that certain people are like, I'm going all in on the White Sox or I'm going all
Yep.
in on Mike Minor, and neither are wrong. It just
Yep.
depends on which one. It's just which one are you going to do, and
Yep.
whichever way it works out, it works out. But I don't blame. So we're both looking at the same information. We're looking at the information that this is a high variance situation where the offense projects well and is cheap because of the cheap
Right.
pieces in it. And the pitcher, from a point per dollar value on a slate that doesn't have the greatest of pitching,
Yeah.
is one of the top 4 pitchers on the slate.
Yeah.
And I think that, and my attitude was, I thought the pitcher was going to go more underowned than the hitters.
Oh, I did the opposite.
Right, right. But do you understand what
And
I'm
you
saying?
were right.
Right. But you thought Minor would be overowned and the White Sox underowned as a
Correct.
stack.
Yep.
But you had to agree that Eloy was going to be overowned.
I didn't look at Eloy. I mean, I look more at
The
stacks
teams,
than
right?
individual
right.
hitters. Yeah.
I just saw that one-off piece of like, if one the stack, like, because I knew that the stack wasn't going to be that owned, because even if Eloy is 25% owned, once you add Abreu and Moncada and Anderson, like the aggregate now starts coming down. So it's
Yeah.
like, okay, I don't mind the Whites. It just comes down to how owned do I think Mike Minor is going to be, and
Yep.
certain sites projected Minor for much higher than what he ended up being.
Huh.
Right, like I think Minor on RG was projected for like 20 to 25% owned, and he came in at 12.
Right.
But
Oh.
the bat had him as the best point per dollar pitcher. So I looked at Eloy's. And I'm like, how much? I don't want to play the White Sox. Like I
Yeah.
thought the White Sox weren't. I thought there were multiple other teams better than the White Sox in general, just in a vacuum. So I'm like,
Yeah.
if I'm not high on the White Sox in a vacuum, then I'm just going to choose to play a lot of Minor, knowing that I hope people play the White Sox. Now,
Yeah.
you did the opposite, but I don't look
Right.
at what you did as wrong.
Yeah. So I looked at the Osmo top stacks tool, and they had, they give you, here's what we expect this stack to be owned. Here is the odds of being the top stack of the day, and here are the odds of being the top value stack of the day. And they were like they expected like 9.8% owned, 10% top stack, and then like 16 or 18% top value stack. So for me, I was like, okay, that's the spot I want to exploit there. But yeah, it's sort of.
And how did Minor
just-
how did Minor look in the top pitchers tool?
I don't remember that exactly. So with the top pitchers tool, I don't look at it as closely usually, because usually no pitcher is going to be higher than like 30% to be one of the top 2 pitchers. Like in general, if you look at the top pitchers tool, it's going to tell you the highest owned pitchers are overowned. Like almost always the highest owned pitchers are overowned relative to their value of being one of the top 2 pitchers. So I used to look at that and actually like X out those top pitchers. I don't do that as much anymore, because I feel like sometimes there are pitchers that maybe they don't have great odds of being one of the top 2, but they can still be the 3rd best, and you can count on it. And I get different more with my batters, I think, than my pitchers.
Right, because you don't need the nuts.
Exactly.
Right, so it's like if you've had, as long as you have 2 pitchers that put up 40 points,
Yep.
Like, you're fine. It doesn't matter how
I'll
owned they
take
are
it.
or anything.
Yep.
And it's more
Exactly.
likely that the pitchers that are owned project the best are going to get there rather than having to rely on 2% owned Brad Keller
Yep.
to give you
Exactly.
25 points, because it's like, I don't want to rely on that, right?
Yeah.
And if he puts up 25 and the 35% owned pitcher puts up 25, like, then what did it matter anyway? The batters
Yeah.
are so much more variant in baseball than what
Yep.
it is. But I'm saying,
Exactly.
but I just wanted to show, like, for people listening, I mean, it's very similar to the pregame show, that we could both be looking at the same exact information, nearly the same exact information,
Right.
and come up with a strategic way where your lineups are plus EV and my lineups are plus EV. It just
Right.
depends on what outcome happens on that specific day,
Yeah.
right? So when
We're both getting different from what the ownership is. And
right,
Yeah.
right. If the
It's
White
high
Sox
variance
put up
spot,
10
yeah.
runs today, your lineups do well and my lineups don't do well. If Minor
Right.
puts up six innings and 9 strikeouts,
Is that what he did?
well, he did 6.
He's right
he
around
put
there.
up I think 17, 20 points something. He got the win.
Yeah. He had a good day.
Right. He had a
Yep.
good day. Then my line, but if in the middle, actually we get screwed if it's in the middle.
Yeah. Right.
Right? If the White Sox put up 4 runs on no home runs and Minor's tagged with all 4 runs and has 3 strikeouts, it's like I get 8 points and your stack lose, and that, like, now
Yeah.
and that's why, like, do you I know some people have different perspectives on this. A lot, I find that I don't want to call them bad players, average players that
Yeah.
focus too much on the picks, on the plays,
Oh, yeah.
who's going to do well today, they'll play multiple lineups, but they don't want to play lineups that root against one. They call it rooting against one another.
Right. Yeah.
Right? So it's like, I'm going to play 5 lineups, and in that situation with the Minor or the White Sox,
Yep.
they think in their head, I need to choose who do I
Right.
think is going to do well. Is it going to be Minor?
Yeah.
Is it going to be the White Sox? Yet if you looked at my exposures from last night, you see that I had like 15% White Sox, even
Right.
while having 55% Minor. Now, because it's
Right.
a 7-game slate, there aren't that many options to choose from. So
Yeah.
obviously the White Sox aren't going to be in Minor lineups. You're not going to play the pitcher and
Yeah,
stack against each other. But you could play 5 lineups and have a White Sox stack. You could have 4 Minor lineups and have your 5th lineup be a White Sox stack. And people naturally look at that and go, well, then I'm rooting, like, it's the opposite of
Right.
what I'm built.
Yeah.
They think that they need to choose who do I think is going to do well. And my attitude is that no, all these 4 lineups all have, if you ran a simulation and all the numbers were right and they were equal, like,
Yeah.
this is the same shot at coming in first place as this other lineup. It just requires a different outcome. And
Yep.
if you're going heavy on my, like, do you want to now reduce your variance, just like diversifying your portfolio? You've
Right.
identified a high variance situation. It's like, why don't I play?
Yeah.
I'll play both sides of it, knowing.
Exactly. Yeah. No.
I mean, it's very similar to MMA. People
with
do
you.
it in MMA all the time. They'll
Oh, yeah.
they'll
You
ask
have to,
me.
right?
They'll go, which guy do you like in this fight? I go, well,
Oh.
I don't care.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, I have both. They'll ask me, who do I have in MMA? I go, everyone.
Although, did you see, like, what was it, a month or so ago? Was it Parlay Picks or somebody who won the big contest in MMA, and he had like 3 fighters locked into his 150 set.
Right.
I was shocked by that. But yeah, no.
But
I'm
you
100%
could,
with that.
you could do that. But some
Yeah.
people, they want, like, I want to pick which side's going to win. And it's
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
me,
No,
I just care about
I
building
definitely don't do that.
win equity line. I don't like. It doesn't matter to me. In fact, in fact, I'm more likely to do it.
Yeah, in a high variance situation, that's where you find your edge. So often, running backs in the NFL, like, where you don't know who is going to be the bell cow, I'm inclined to play both. Like, if it's like, so last year there was a time when it was like Malcolm Brown, Cam Akers, Darrell Henderson. Nobody knew. Like, they all had good weeks. So one week I was like, I'm going to be overexposed to all 3 of them. And of course, it was a week that none of them did anything.
Right.
But those are the spots where I'm like, yeah, when people don't know what's going to happen, when it is a high variance situation and there can be a spike in points, either direction, for sure, I'm going to try both sides. I'm not going to worry about them going against each other. I'm going to set settings so that they're not in the same lineup, like you said. But yeah, I feel like those are the biggest spots to find edge, is where you don't know what's going to happen. I mean, you never know what's going to happen, obviously, but where there's a large range of outcomes and people are really digging in one way or the other, that's kind of where you can find a little edge there.
Right. I do
So
that in
so yeah,
MMA all the time. I mean, to me,
yeah,
like I and if you listen to MMA shows and the especially on the smaller the slate gets, and we always see these cancellations and everything.
yeah,
Whenever you get to the point, if whenever you listen to a show and the two people talking are like, "Yeah, this is one of those fights where you go to the bathroom," I probably have a lot of that fight
yeah,
because it's MMA and one punch could do anything. I mean, like,
right,
so like I end up with a lot of times I have lineups that are I mean, brutal,
yeah,
6 losers or whatever. But like all those times where it's like the guy that hasn't had a finish in 6 years gets a first round knockout and
right,
he's like 6% owned. Like I have like 20% of that guy because
yep,
he's still under owned because if you go by the betting lines, like, yes, he's the lowest that he has a 12% shot at first round knockout, but he's only going to be 6% owned. So,
right,
right.
yeah,
Or these high price
take that,
fighters that typically don't have a good like scoring history where it's
okay,
like they don't finish people enough and they're slow paced. It's like, dude, if you watch MMA, and now I do watch MMA because I think it's a good
yeah,
sweat. Uh, dude, like literally every MMA card, there's something that has never happened before. Like
really,
you don't know what fight it's going to be. It's going to be like no
yeah,
one would
yeah,
have expected this, or this guy is coming off a two. Like when you see these fights where one guy they haven't fought in 2 years, and people are
right,
analyzing fights from
like
5 years
like
ago.
Dillashaw this past week, right? That was
Right, right, well,
his deal,
exactly. Right, like something like that, or who just they always have a fight like someone like Arce, right? Arce was coming back for two
right,
years, and it's like, well, he normally doesn't. He's normally a point scorer or whatever. It's like, who knows? Maybe in 2 years he's like, I'm gonna turn into a finisher. I mean, like he's gonna be
right,
like, and people don't play him because he's not as good as the other higher price fighters because they have a better
yeah,
inside the distance lines. But it's like, dude, the good dude's gonna be 12% owned, and he's not. And who knows? He comes out
yeah,
and gets a quick one bonus. So he wins in the first round, and no one has him.
yeah,
And then the other high priced fighters lose. Right? I mean,
right.
like, I'm playing
I,
a large field. I'm trying to win with a unique lineup. Like that's what you have
yeah.
to think. But
So
to go
I
to
have
get
no
back to
idea
the
what I'm
point,
doing.
it goes against
Yeah,
what
yeah.
we
Okay.
see. You watch these Awesemo shows, and it goes
Right.
against because you get these conspiracies. Like on Reddit, I literally saw yesterday that like, you can't trust the sites because the analysts give out here are the best plays, and they do the complete opposite.
Right.
And
Yeah.
it's
I love that.
like no, they give out what the chalk is, and it's up to you to build lineups that have first place equity, which most likely
Right.
don't have chalk in it.
Yeah. Right. Yep. That's exactly right. I mean, that is. I feel like any kind of show like that where they're giving away the picks, usually they're disinclined to go away from the chalk and what they're suggesting, because if they're going to be wrong, people focus more on when you're wrong than when you're right. And if they're going to be wrong, they want to be wrong with everybody else and be like, well, everybody else thought that too, so I'm not just crazy wrong. A lot of those sites, I feel like, you know, try to be more in line with the chalk, or are afraid to get too far away from the chalk.
No, but they're technically right though.
Yeah, they're giving the best projected plays,
Right.
but they're not giving the best plays for daily fantasy sports. I mean,
Right. Well,
maybe good year long.
but that's exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah, yeah,
People that 95% of the audience doesn't understand the difference. They don't
right,
understand that when me and you said I played one side of the game and you played the other side of the game, and we both look at each other going, good play,
right.
regardless
Yep,
of what happens with the results, because that's you should have played one or the other, right?
right,
Right.
right.
If you looked at
Yep,
both and say I don't think any of this is good, it's like maybe that
yeah,
wasn't the best thing, but like
right,
we could all look at projections and go like these are the best. Like that's the thing that always frustrates. That's why I can't do some of those shows where
yeah,
it's like, dude, like dude, I'll give you the link. Just go to the page that I'm looking at and like, what's the best third
yeah,
baseman on this slate? It's like Chris Bryant. I mean, sure.
yeah.
I mean,
According to fantasy points per dollar on this projection page,
right,
Chris Bryant. Yeah,
right, like that type of thing. But is that the best play for the lineup that you're making? Maybe,
right,
maybe not.
right,
I don't know what you're doing, right? I mean, if I'm playing large field and I'm playing all the chalk, I'm playing my cash lineup. Yeah, you're probably that's not good, right?
right.
And then you say
Yeah,
the complete opposite. I'm playing a 100-man single entry contest and I'm playing a 1% owned stack and two 1% owned pitchers. I'm like, Like they're 1% owned for a reason. They don't project well. So like
Right.
most likely you shouldn't be playing. Oh, does that mean you don't like that? Like I don't I don't know. Like to me that's do you were you ever at a position playing daily fantasy? Because I consider that to be like that. That's like the neutrals. Like that's the what do you that's the singularity type of like that mental shift of because everyone's to me even I started that way like 2015.
Right.
I know I started playing soccer. I know soccer, right?
Right.
These are the good teams, are the bad teams, are the good players. You put together lineups and you look at a good player eventually and you go, why'd they play this $3,200 defender that sucks? It's like,
Right.
because defenders they really don't have ceilings, so you might as well just play whatever the fuck defender, right? Like the
Interesting.
cheapest one.
Okay.
And you start getting the DFS concepts, and then you start seeing it's less and
Yeah.
less about the sport, and then you get into projections, and then you see it's less and less even about the players.
Right.
Like, were you at a point when you started where like how did that shift? Because you didn't
So
you didn't get immediately to the point where you're showing up 15 minutes before the slate, looking at some
No.
projections and building 150 lineups at the Fantasy Cruncher.
Yeah, no. And it's funny because I don't know exactly when it happened, but I looked through my results on Roto Tracker, and it's very clear that like when I started the first couple of years, like my results are all over the place. I'm not like putting any special number in the top 1%. And then like it's there was a couple of years where it was like starting to be kind of all over the place, but I'm still putting like 1.3% into the top 1% of lineups. And then there was a year where it just like suddenly spiked, where it's just like everything shifted one year. And I don't know why, because it was before I started using an optimizer. I don't know what happened that year. Maybe I heard some good advice somewhere that I don't really remember, but it's just kind of been etched into my brain. But yeah, definitely, I was not great player for many years, for at least a few years.
When did you
before it
start?
kind of
When did you
clicked for me.
start?
According to Roto Tracker, my first ever DFS contest was in 2010. I have no idea what I played in 2010 because I played like one entry or like two entries, and then my next was in 2013, and that's when I really kind of started. I started doing NBA just to give me something to cheer for while I watched basketball, and then I kind of got more serious over time. So it's kind of like 2013. I started to just play, 5 lineups on a given NBA slate, and then 2014 a little bit more, 2015 a little bit more, and kind of
You're
progressed.
2 years into this more than I am.
When did you start?
I started October 2015.
Okay, yeah. So I've been doing it a while. Not very seriously at first, but yeah, that's I think my first lineup that I remember was 2013.
Was it a good lineup?
No, it was terrible.
Well, back then
I
I thought in 2013 all you had to do was you had to just make sure you didn't have like back then it must if we had it's like if I knew what I knew now back then, I mean we'd be crushing it, right?
Yeah.
It would be stupid.
Man, yeah, just run the best projected lineup would probably be all you really need to do.
Right, even just that. Right, exactly. Or like the on-off tools for NBA, like that they didn't exist. Right.
Yeah.
People were playing that 4%, 5% owned guys that weren't even in lineups. Right.
Yeah.
Like people. I mean, it was just.
I was probably that guy.
Right. You were probably
Sadly,
that guy.
I didn't have these tools. Yeah, because I started. I had not been a basketball fan, but my brother kept inviting me over to watch basketball, and it was like something for us to do together. And I was a basketball fan in like the 90s, so he was like, "You need to get back into it. It's really fun again." So I was like, "Fine. If I'm going to watch basketball, I'm going to set some lineups." But like these are players I'd never heard of before. Like I didn't know what they looked like. I knew nothing about them. But I'm kind of like I'd read. Back then I was on only Roto Grinders, and I would read like the daily like here's going to be good today, just like read an article to tell me who to play based on what they say. So I would, I guess I had some knowledge based on reading Roto Grinders, but not a lot because I didn't know the players. I didn't know, what was really going on.
Right, and then you start getting. I mean, do you have a past experience in poker? Like what do you? I mean, you still have a 9 to 5. Like what do you do for a living?
So I'm a lawyer. I'm not a practicing lawyer. So I have a law degree, and I work at Thomson Reuters. We publish cases for lawyers doing research, and I write essentially Cliff's Notes for legal cases. during the day. But yeah, no, I don't have any.
So you have no
real.
background in games or in finance or in
Nope.
in any subject that would be very like probabilistic.
I was an English major. Yeah, no, I got none of that past experience to really help me. So I guess I was starting pretty fresh in 2013. I was starting kind of from scratch and not really knowing the game theory or anything. I played a fair amount of like full tilt poker, like in just for fun shortly after college, but like was never got to be that great at it. I'd have like, a few days where I'd win a lot and then I would lose it really quickly. So yeah, not a whole lot of poker background. Yeah, just kind of
Does
figured it
legal
out as I
think, does
went.
the thinking of a lawyer? I mean, lawyer very rule based. I mean, I think
Yeah, I mean,
I
there's
think
a lot
there's
of
some logic to that.
at least to get into law school, there's a lot of like logical reasoning tests and stuff, and I guess they do try to teach you logical reasoning in law school to an extent, I guess.
Right, but they don't teach you like, okay, well, if you make this argument, you have a 78% chance of swaying
There's no math involved,
8/12
that's
of
for
the
sure.
jury. Are you going to
Yeah.
make this like you're not doing that type of stuff?
No, yeah,
But that's how poker players would think. Be like,
Right,
I can
yeah.
make this point and get these three jurors to think this, and the judge, and you weigh the probability, and you go, okay, my closing argument is this, and my expected value of this closing argument based on this settlement for this civil lawsuit is $1.7 million. So I'm going to say
Yeah.
this.
right.
Right? It doesn't
Yeah,
kind
they
of
don't
work
teach you
way.
that in law school.
No, they didn't.
Maybe at the big firms. Maybe they got a guy who does that for them at the big firms, but yeah, no.
Right. So I mean, but you're competing. I mean, you're competing at the level. I consider you one of the top large field GPP players. I mean,
Yeah,
but you have to realize, you take a look at the RG leaderboard, like you go down this, you're dealing with like most people that have like applied mathematics degrees.
Oh, I know. Yeah, I look at him
it's-
like, man, I am not like these guys. Meet Whistles Go Woo. He's a professor doing like advanced analysis. Yeah, it's I do not have that background, and I wish I had a little bit more. I mean, I feel like I play a little bit of the game theory, but I feel like I have a ways to go to be like to really compete with the top players. Like,
But do you really think so? I think we're going to get to the point. I think the reason why we can do what we do is because there's still too much of the field that doesn't project anything. Like just
right. That's true.
Or either they do one of two things. Either they're just playing who they believe are the best plays. They're making construction errors, which reduces their ceiling, or they're playing too safe lineups. Like, to me, the biggest edge is that people are smart. Like, I know what the best plays are, and they're playing the best plays, but there's absolutely no game theory element. So they're playing a lot of lineups that have a lot of min cash equity, but not like they're not going to compete for the top spot.
And that's why guys like you and me are successful. But I don't think that, at least I don't consider myself to be on the level of the guys who understand all the game theory, but also have a little bit more math in their process, like the brick 75s.
Yeah, but we both have math in our. We're not. It's not like we don't have math.
Yeah, that's good.
I consider it the difference is that it's that precise versus accuracy. It's like Like, I know I poke fun at brick. I'm like, it has to be the .001 type of thing, and I just like kind of estimate it or eyeball it or ballpark it. It's like, as long as I'm directionally right. I'm not going to be precisely right. Yes. Brian is going to beat me over the long run, over a 20-year sample size. Me and him playing 150 lineups every slate, he's going to show more profit. But in the short periods, there's enough dead money. There's enough bad
for all of us to get some.
For all of us to get some. And I'm going to take advantage of the fact that I don't have to build anything, because these things like to me, I believe that the information will only get better. Yeah. And the more, which means that if you had, like, go back to 2013, right? If you had awesome projections in 2013, you would crush the games.
Oh yeah, for
right?
Sure. Yep.
Because the relative value of having them is so much higher.
Yeah.
Now, let's say you have your own model, like, so it's not a public. So in 2013, Osimo projections didn't like Osimo had them. Obviously, Alex wasn't playing back then. I don't think so. I don't think he started playing until 2015 or 16.
Oh, I didn't know that. Wow.
Uh, so if you had those types of projections for yourself, you crushed. But
Oh yeah.
then once 2000, as time goes on, Basketball Monster projections, then we have Roto Grinders project, then we start having, like, now the differences between your projections and what other people have access to is much smaller. Yeah. I only think that is going to get smaller and smaller over time. So to me, the value of accurate projections 5 years from now is not, it's definitely not going to be as high. It all comes down to the other like that, the bottom 50% of the player pool, what they do and what new people come into there. So the more and more people are like, well, that where projections are like normally, we don't have shows. Like we wouldn't get to the point where there's no YouTube shows of player over player. And we're talking about, well, here are the projections and go look at them and build your lineups. Yeah. Like then to me, the advantage comes into more of our type of like game theory. I believe game theory is future proof, while projections aren't.
Yeah, no, so I agree with you that the game theory is the biggest part of winning at DFS, more so than. So when I say statistical, I don't really mean like projections. I guess I'm trying to think exactly what I mean. So I feel like there are aspects. So I think that
there's aspects of game theory, like you could automate, like all the simulation stuff. And then determining optimal percentages, like that's game theory. That is game theory. Like everything is game. Right. Like there's not one element, but I'm talking about the value of, like, me and you do it more by either using someone else's tool or by by estimation, by looking, by going, I believe this team is underowned. I don't know how much underowned to the decimal point.
Right.
But I know it enough that I'm going to play more lineups with that team and more lineups with this team and less lineups with, like, and make those choices. And compared to the rest of the field, we're going to have more of an advantage. Now, compared to someone like Alex, he's going to do that on a mathematical basis, and he's going to be more correct than we are, but we're going to be close to that. Yeah. But compared to everyone else that does it, like if it gets to the point 5 years from now that everyone has like the same projections, we're still going to get 95% of the crowd that's going to go like that. You trust me. I don't know if you download the CSVs.
I don't.
Typically. Okay, if you download the CSVs, especially in NFL, if you do it in NFL, do it for like the 9, maybe not that, do it for the Millie Maker. Okay. You will see trains upon trains of dupes. And if you subscribe to all the sites and know all that and everything, I could predict exactly what those line. Like, I'm not talking about trains of people entering in multiple times. I'm talking about multiple users.
Man.
So you'll see multiple where. Like, if you pressed in, and what people do is that I've seen people, because they've come to me for help, that they're using an optimizer, and maybe it's Fantasy Cruncher, maybe it's Lineup HQ, maybe it's SaberSim, maybe it's Daily Roll. We enter all of them, and so many of them are like they build 150 cash lineups,
right?
Like it's like why aren't I and the thing is that they're min cashing enough the lineups that they're not losing a ton of money.
Right.
Right. So like I put in 150 lineups. I spend, $750, or they'd playing the mini max or something.
Yeah.
I $1 mini max. I put in $150. I got back 132.
Yeah.
But their best lineup didn't even come close to anything. And and now there's I do all different types of stacks. So now they're doing 5-3, 4-3-1, 3-3-2, and then they're setting unique players to 2, and maybe a max of 50% of any one player, and then just running 150.
Right.
And then it's like, okay, you built 150 kind of correlated semi-cash line. Like you're still not you're still way too chalky. Like these lineups just all the combinations are all the same. Like you're playing the 2 chalk stacks and the 2 chalk pitchers and the 2v2 different. You're playing the 9th hitter and it's like, okay. And you're playing too many of those lineups. So then they end up with I only played 5 teams in 150 lineups. And then the Pirates go off and score 12 runs and their lineups are dead. I mean, so they come, it's like, what am I doing wrong? It's like, oh, you're doing the actual playing of DFS wrong.
Right.
Like they think I have, but they're like, I have projections. I have an optimizer.
Right.
I
They're
have
not
the
the worst
settings. I
players.
asked
They're
a
like,
sharp player what settings they have. I saw in a video they had these
yeah,
settings. How come when I press the button I don't win? I
right.
don't win enough.
Yeah.
Or I've been doing this, and sometimes I win a little. Sometimes like they never. If you lost all your money immediately too many times, then at least you fix your error immediately. But a lot of
Yeah.
times I see that, like, dude, and you download the CSV and you could find these lines. I mean, like you could legitimately find these lineups, especially in NFL, where it's like I like whoever subscribes to the Blitz will have this lineup, and they'll throw it in GPPs.
Huh.
And then I could tell, like, I could put in like a 2-1 or a 3-1 stack, and then just give me 150 liners with the blitz projection. I could find all those lines, and a lot of times it's the same users that have, like,
Huh.
if they have the first lineup, they probably have the second lineup, they probably have the third lineup, and I'm looking at this going, dude, we could give you all the information if you don't have the actual, like,
Yeah.
I'm expecting.
No, I agree.
Right,
Yeah.
you agree. Like, I expect 5 years from
Yeah.
now, even if you gave people all this information,
Yeah.
more of them
some
end up
people
doing that and not actually thinking through of what these lineups
Yeah.
should even look like, regardless of having a secondary, like, simulation methodology to
Yeah.
show you that. But I think
Right.
me and you could get to that point
Yeah.
that we beat
No.
all those players. Now, once we get to the point
yeah.
where everyone's doing what we're doing, then I don't even know if there's any money. I don't.
Yeah.
Then DFS.
Who knows
dies.
if we'll get to that point? That
Right.
would, yeah. I hope it doesn't get to that point. Yeah. So I mean, I totally agree that, like, there's enough dead money for all of us to make money. I guess my thinking is, if I had applied a little bit more math or had a little bit more time, I could get rid of, like, I still think that I play negative EV lineups every day. Like, I think that I play plenty of negative EV lineups, whereas I think, like, the true best players don't. Like, I think they actually spend enough time and have enough knowledge to get rid of like, they play 150 all plus EV lineups. And I think I play enough that I'm successful, but I think that I still play plenty of lineups that don't really have a chance to win. So,
Right. No, I agree.
so that's what I mean when I say,
right.
yeah,
A lot of times you run out of time or something, and you just get, like, I'm willing, like, if I'm building 100 lineups, a lot of times I don't play 150.
right,
I'm willing to accept that 10% of my lineups are loss leaders.
okay,
Right.
yeah,
Like I know that it's quite possible that the bottom 10, 10 out of 100 are, but in order to get the other 90, I need to make those 10. Like, it's
yeah,
one of those things where,
and that's how I play too. So
Right.
I'm glad to hear you say that, because I kind of feel like, I'm like, man, I feel like I'm missing an opportunity sometimes by not, like, spending a little bit more time to really make sure that my stacks are better. So, like, in MLB, that I don't have the 5-3 of both chalk stacks. Like, sometimes occasionally I'll end up with a stack that's just like, yeah, I played the chalk, and I shouldn't have had them together.
but I mean,
I'm
you can
like,
do that bluntly with ownership, min and maxes.
yeah,
I mean, I do a lot of things bluntly. I mean, but you have to know, but you have to understand the concept of what you're doing first, because a lot of times, like, you'll play the two, like, you'll win with the 2 chalk pitchers and the 2 chalk stacks, and they go, oh, I can't believe you're chalk docking. It's like, well, I played the 8th hitter. Like,
right,
it's one of those
true,
things. You played the Braves, but instead of playing Acuna, you played Arcia, who's
right,
like 2% owned, and he hits a home run. Like, and it's
yeah,
like, but the lineup, take a look at the whole lineup in a whole. The ownership made sense, and it just so happens it was the 2 chalky stacks, but it wasn't the chalkiest parts of the 2 stacks.
right.
So you could that still shows that you could make a lineup, but some people are like, I need to X out the chalk, and I'm like, don't X.
Right.
They're the chalk for a reason. They're the
So I
best
think
high
you take care of
probability
that.
plays.
My understanding is you take care of that to some extent by setting, like, a max ownership per lineup. Is that correct?
Yes.
See, I don't even do that. So that's one very simple way that I could get rid of some negative EV lineups.
But it's a blunt way of doing, because we both, I mean, maybe we don't both know, but mathematically, ownership sum is not, you'd rather do it by ownership product.
Yeah.
Because ownership sum, you could have 6 chalky guys and 1.5% owned guy.
Right.
And that's,
Which is often what I do. I like to do that. Yeah.
right. Like,
Especially
that could
NFL.
still be enough. As long as that 0.5, that 0.5% owned guy puts up a grand slam, I mean, like, then you're good. I mean, like,
Right.
like, so it's not just the sum. I mean, I do that in MMA. I can't do that, because sometimes you'll actually get a high ownership sum and have that lineup be unique. because it leaves 2,000 on the table, right? You're
Right,
playing
right,
you're playing the three most owned underdogs with a main event fighter, the highest owned favorite, and some other guy that's like 22% owned.
Yeah.
But
So MMA, I have no idea what I'm doing in MMA. I'll just
but
start with that. I think I played 3 MMA slates.
okay, so you don't normally play MMA. It's just weird for me
Yeah.
to say, like, I have no idea what I'm doing in MMA, yet you still play it.
I'm
Right.
still gonna play it. Yeah. Well, that's how you learn, right? I mean, I'm a very hands-on learner, so that's how I got
do you
better
go by projections? Like median projections for that?
in MMA.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, I adjust. So I watch the Awesemo MMA shows to try and get an idea of who the fighters are, and the probability is just based on what they say, and then I adjust their projections based on that. And so one thing the first slate that I played, I didn't do very well, and then I looked at DeColts. I looked at lineup study, went to DeColts because he had a good day, and saw that he had set his salary cap to like 49,200 or something like
Right.
that. So I was like, okay, that's what I need to do. I need to set but then I look at it like 2 weeks later, and I'm like, I look at other top players. I look at, Brick 75 and Whistles Go. I don't know. I looked at some of the other top players, and they didn't do that. So I'm still very much learning how to play MMA, and I'm not sure that I should be playing MMA because
But do you play NFL Showdown?
Yeah. Oh yeah, I love NFL Showdown.
If you like NFL Showdown, MMA is more like that.
Okay.
Like,
yeah.
So the point is that it depends on the size of the slate. Like as the slate gets smaller, the amount of unique lineups that are available go dramatically down.
I heard you say that on one of your shows, that you like, if it's less than 10 fights, you
I don't even bother
or something
playing.
like that.
Yeah. I think if there's 9 fights, I'm not even sure if there's literally any lineup that's plus EV.
Okay.
Like literally, I don't think there's literally a lineup that could be plus in a large field. Like what I'll do on the smaller cards, because a lot of times these fights get canceled or whatever. So like we had 10 fight, 11 fight card. That's when I play the 555. That's when I play the small field.
Right.
Because then it's like, okay, I don't need to worry. Duplication isn't as much of a worry in a contest with 400 people, right? I'm probably going to be different anyway, but I mean, I don't have to care. I'm not going to play 100 to 150 lineups in a large field contest.
That's what I did in the NBA finals. I just I stopped having fun doing the showdown stuff with everybody duping the top lineup. So then I just started playing the 555 for the NBA final showdown slates.
Right. But MMA, I don't use projections at all.
Oh, really?
I used the efficient market hypothesis. I just assume the betting lines are accurate.
Okay.
So like only because because MMA is so binary.
Yep.
One guy wins, one guy loses, right? I mean, like,
and
if you do an analysis, I've done this, which makes complete sense. I mean, I'm not gonna surprise anyone. Your goal in MMA to win a large field tournament is pretty much to have your fighters put up 100 points each.
Yep.
Right. Okay. So
what
what action is most correlative to 100 points? A first round knockout. Right? Yep. So if the betting odds for a first round knockout on a fighter is 16%, how much are they owned in comparison to that?
Right.
That's the most correlative. The second most correlative is winning inside the distance to get 100 points, right? Now, you'd obviously have it in the first round, but still, the correlation of a 100-point score is not as much to a decision as it is to a finish inside the distance.
Right.
So you want to see what the odds are, the betting lines on typically a sharper book, Pinnacle, 5 Dimes, bookmaker, offshore, not the retail.
Okay, because I can't even bet in Minnesota, so I'm like, I don't even know where to find the books necessarily.
Right, but but I'm saying because it's so binary. So if you don't, now obviously there are certain fighters that put up more points, like because they wrestle more and whatever. But let's say you don't, like, I'm not concerning myself with that. Like, you have to know the fighter. That's why you watch a show and you go, okay, this guy may not have a good chance of winning inside the distance, but he could put up 100 points in a decision. Like, then now I have to mentally adjust that up. But most people already do that. They're over-owned as it is. So I'm looking, so essentially all I'm doing is looking, how do I put together 6 fighters that could score 100 plus points and it's all correlated to inside the distance and round one odds, and obviously the higher the point, higher the salary, the more points they'll need, and the lower.
Yep.
So like a lower salary fighter, like maybe a win in a decision is 82 points, and at 6,900 that's fine. So
Right.
what's the odds of that versus the ownership? And at 9,400, like dude, a win by decision, especially when there's like three other 9,000 fighters on the slate, is probably not going to
Yeah.
be good enough. So it's like,
Right.
so if I believe that the market is efficient enough, why? What are the projections going to tell? I mean, the
Yeah.
projections deal with all these other metrics and how many punches, strikes per. Like MMA is so binary, and so this guy that had normally takes down everyone and has 4 takedowns per fight goes in and has none, and they have a boxing match. I mean, like, there's so
Right.
much variance in that just going by the betting. I mean, what
Yeah.
other
I mean,
method?
it makes sense.
Right? So that's why I find these fighters that, like, why'd you choose to play this guy? It's like, well, he was 12% owned and he's 22% inside the distance. Yeah, but
Right.
that guy sucks.
Yeah.
So then he wouldn't be
Right.
22% inside the distance and 12%. And then,
Yeah.
like, why didn't you play this other guy? It's like he had the highest inside the distance. He was 52% to be inside the distance. Yeah, he's 62% owned.
Right.
He's the high, but he still has the highest probability. So, which means he's still
Right.
going to be in plenty of my lineups, but
Yeah.
not as many of them. So, I mean,
Yeah.
but to me, like what I just described, I mean, that's isn't that what game theory is? I mean,
Yeah, and I mean that's also a unique process, so that kind of helps you to get unique just by not using projections. So
no, I think
yeah.
John Scarlet Patrol, he does it. I think he's very
Okay.
similar also.
Well, it's not bad company to be in then.
Right. But I mean, but you know how frustrating it could be when you talk to people that play MMA and DFS, like average players, and they're like, "Well, who do you like in a fight?" And it's like, I don't like
Right,
any,
right.
I don't like anyone in a fight. I don't like
Yeah.
like why'd you play this guy with that guy? It's like because it's a lineup that's 48,800 and it's unique.
Yep.
And that's it. It's like, well, you really thought that guy was going to win? No, I have no
Yeah.
fucking clue. And you say you don't know anything about MMA. I know it's just about slightly more than you. Just
Okay.
very, very, very slightly.
I mean, you watch it now.
Yeah,
At least you started watching it.
I only because of COVID,
Yeah. Right.
right? Because MMA came back because Dana White went to Abu Dhabi or whatever. And
Yeah.
what the hell else are we playing, right?
Yeah.
I needed to play something, so I'm like, okay. Soccer came back, so I was playing Bundesliga soccer, so that was fine. But
I
soccer,
never
I
got
already
into
knew.
any of that stuff. I just took the time off. I was one of the rare players who plays every day who was just like, all right, I'm taking a break from DFS because I wasn't going to get into the esports and the sports I don't know. I guess I played a little bit of KBO, Korean baseball.
But you knew, but you
yeah.
knew MLB. I mean, baseball
Yeah,
DFS
yeah,
is
exactly.
baseball. I mean, you
Yeah.
didn't know
I
the
understand
players,
what's
but
going
you
on.
knew like you knew the scoring
Yeah.
system and construction and stuff like
Exactly.
that.
Yeah.
Right. So you're not getting into soccer then.
I never got into soccer. Yeah.
So do you?
Yeah.
So you primarily just play basically MLB, NBA, NFL.
Primarily XFL. I got super into XFL for the 5 weeks that it existed.
But
I
it's
started
still
playing
football.
PGA.
It's still football. I mean, even
Yeah,
if you
exactly.
told me
It's
it was
the same.
WNBA, I'd still be
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
it's still It's still basketball.
I would
DFS.
love to play WNBA if they just had bigger payouts. The payouts just not enough to make it worth my time to play WNBA. But yeah, and I've gotten into PGA. I've started trying to play PGA and MMA. Still kind of figuring out what I'm doing there though.
PGA is brutal.
Yeah, that's been my experience too.
Everyone's experience. I think
Yeah.
I think PGA is the most efficient DFS market.
But then I feel like I've seen there's a guy with with I think Randy Moss in his profile picture on DraftKings, like MJ something, I don't know, who I feel like I see at the top of PGA all the time. Like every time I play, I'm like, man, this guy has PGA figured out. Like I feel like there are certain players that I see at the top more than I would expect to, because I feel the same way. I feel like it's so efficient. Like how do people find a big edge in PGA? But then there seem to be some players who are doing something different that's working for them. So
Well,
I don't know.
it's the only. I mean, also it's maybe a lack of certain metrics. It's because it's the only. I believe it's the only sport where the highest correlation is ownership.
Right.
Like if you back tested for previous performance, the number one the number one thing to weigh who's going to do well predictively is ownership. And once that happens, then what
Yeah,
what
that's the
element of
point.
game theory? I mean,
Yeah,
if
interesting.
right, like what am I doing then? But
Yeah,
that's what I tried to do in PGA. In PGA, like I was the one, I played PGA for like maybe a year and a half, and pretty much anyone that was 20+% owned, I just X out.
okay.
In a full field, like in a 156 person field, like no one is 20%, like no one. Like
Yeah,
there's no
20%
golfer.
likely to win, or yeah,
Right. Like on a 15 game slate, are you going to be playing 25% batters?
right.
Right. Like it's the same type of thing. Like there's not even Mike Trout, not even Juan Soto. There's no one that's that successful that's worth to play at that ownership.
Right.
But the problem comes in is that, anyone that's high owned, like one of them is winning. I mean, like just
Yeah.
it's like there's it's almost impossible to build line, like, and I'm going through past CSVs and I'm studying other people's lineups, and it just like everything, and then when I take away mine, it's like I'm trying to play the low owned stuff and trying to
Yeah.
flip ownership and do that, and then I find that my lineups are actually much worse than lineups that are chalkier, but the differences between the chalkier lineups are nothing. Like so it's like how could any of these lineups be plus EV? Like everyone has like similar
Yeah.
lineups, and they all, if you simulated it out, like they all have, it's like there's like 10,000 lineups. So it's like this. It almost seems like a lottery to me.
Yeah.
Because if I try to
I mean,
apply
that's
game theory, I end up getting worse lineups.
Yep.
And then if I play, like, okay, well, I'm just going to get about this ownership and whatever. And it's like, okay, there's about 50,000 of these combinations, and they're
Yeah.
all about equal to each other.
I tried at one
And then
point.
just
So
play with.
Osimo,
Then I guess it's just to me it feels like a raffle, right? Because it's like,
yeah.
I'm gonna play 150 of these, and someone else is gonna play another 150, and we're all about equal, and just comes down to like who wins the raffle this week.
Yeah. So I tried at one point. I didn't end up actually using this strategy, but I started to try to use the Osmo Top Golfers tool, or I don't know if that's what it's called, but similar to the Top Stacks in Baseball tool, where they give you the percentage owned and then the odds of being top 6, and kind of trying to use it in the same way to like use that to shape like every player's exposure. And then as I was going through it, was like, man, every player is going to be like 2 to 5%. Every golfer is going to be like 2 to 5% owned based on, using the same strategy. And I'm pretty sure that's not how you want to play PGA DFS. So yeah, I definitely have not figured out how to find any kind of edge there.
Well, it's just like what you mentioned with the top pitchers tool. It's like the
Yeah.
top pitchers tool would say that all the 4 highest owned pitchers are over owned, yet they're also the highest projected pitchers, and you probably should play them anyway.
Right. Yep.
Right.
Yep,
You still probably should. Right. I mean, that's
Yeah.
right. In golf, it's like Paul Casey's 7,200 for no reason, and he's going to be 32% owned. Yet that's what and then he should be that owned. I mean, and then like how is that possible? It's 150 people in the field. How is nope? But that's what kills you. As someone that plays like us, it's like
Yeah.
like, oh, 32% on golfer. This is easy. Get out of here.
Not gonna play that guy. Yep.
T4, and you're like, come on, can I?
Yeah. Yeah, it's frustrating.
And then you play the 6% on golfer that projects for pretty much the same as the 22% on golfer, and your guy leads off with like 3 double bogeys, and you're like,
yeah,
like, dude, you couldn't even give me a sweat. You couldn't even. You're +6 after 5. Like you're like this is.
Yeah.
I just you unstar them in your PGA app like by Thursday at 11 in the morning.
Yeah.
And it's only once a week. I think PGA would be more bearable if it was more of a daily sport.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Like if they play the whole event. I'm talking about like if they played 2 or 3 events a week.
Yeah.
Then it feels right. You feel like you get something like having those lineups on Saturday, where it's like, how many 6 out of 6s do I have? 3, right?
Yeah.
And then seeing the other 147 lineups and going, can I hide these? You can't even use the all tab because it's I know I lost that money. You don't have to constantly remind me of that.
Yep. I hate that. Yep. Just stuck in there. You can't get rid of the golf. Same thing. Well, it's different this year with best ball. I know you don't play best ball, but last year for a while, I had so many best ball lineups, and they're just in my contests showing up in my contest on DraftKings, and that was not enjoyable having that all there. So yeah,
And I like See, to me, I like the football season because
yeah,
even though we like the main slates are pretty much are Sundays,
yeah.
but I feel like we get enough diversity now. Like I feel like in NBA and MLB, it feels like a grind
Oh yeah,
because pretty much every day is this. You're repeating the same day over again.
yeah.
Obviously,
Very
different
much
slate
correct.
sizes. You may have Thursdays in MLB. You have the 5-game early and the 8-game late. I mean, so you get some
Yep,
type of something there. But I feel like in NFL, it's like okay, Sunday is the biggie, right?
yep.
You get Sunday Classic. Then you still enter like your 4 p.m. afternoon contests,
Of course. Yeah.
right? So you get the little short slate. So you get this big slate
Yep.
that everyone's looking forward to. Yet you still get the short slate. You could be a short slate specialist. And
It's
then
Sunday Night Football.
then you get Sunday Night Football, which is Showdown,
Yep.
right? So you build your line. So now that everything's winding out, now you get Showdown. Then you get Monday and Thursday. You get Monday Night Football, which tends to be a good game, and you
Yep.
get a showdown between good teams. And then
Yeah.
on Thursday
The
night,
best.
you're playing a showdown contest where you don't feel like rostering any of these guys.
Do you play any Flash Draft?
No, I
Okay.
tried. The duplication factor is too much in it because they only give you like 3 choices 6 times. So
So early on, I was crushing that when they first started, and it was mostly just because I would take the kicker. Like nobody takes the kickers. I would take the kicker. He'd be 6% owned, and I'd win, and I won several times. I think last year I didn't do nearly as well. I stopped playing as much too, but I think a lot of people kind of figured it out a little bit, applied a little bit more of the game theory to it, and
well,
it
also the
got a
choices
little bit
sometimes are
tougher.
just awful. Like you look and you go,
Yeah,
there's one
I don't want
clear
these guys.
choice that's going to be projected
Yeah.
way high. I mean, like
Yeah. Well, and it's like it's in game, so sometimes it'll be, well, this wide receiver has been ruled out for the rest of the
right,
game, like,
exactly.
and he's one of the multiple choice options. So yeah, it takes away a little bit of the strategy there, but that's sometimes that can be an edge too, because there's one guy in the field of, I forget, 12 or I don't remember how many it is, but one guy who still plays him, like who has not been keeping up with the game, and
Right.
so
The same thing for the second half. They do the second half showdowns,
yeah, right.
right? So
And it's like,
you base it on there's something else. I mean, quarter by quarter showdowns.
yeah,
They
who
have
starts with the ball? Who's going to start with the ball this quarter?
right.
It's like that's a big
But I feel like there's enough different. Like I feel like that NFL week. It feels like because really like to me the NFL week for DFS starts on Tuesday. Like
okay.
Tuesday's like the first time I
Yeah.
actually may look at the salaries and go, okay, what do I have to look at? Maybe not even Tuesday's the day off.
Yeah,
To me,
right.
Tuesday's the rest day, right? Wednesday is the first day because Wednesday is the practice day, right? So you'll get some
Yeah.
practice reports in your timeline, and you start
Yeah.
looking at salaries, and you go, okay, I could see this team being whatever. You look at the totals and whatever. Then Thursday, you get Thursday Night Football. It's the Browns versus it's going to be 2 horrible teams probably,
Yeah.
right? The game that has a 37 total, and so you play that, and you're just excited to play because it's like it's been 3 days without football, right? So it's just
Yeah,
like
yeah.
I don't care. I
Oh,
don't care
exactly.
that these 2 teams suck,
Yeah.
right?
Give me some football. Yep.
Right, and then we typically on the Thursday night slate, all the sharp players or some of the sharp touts or whatever make the. It's every Thursday. There's going to be some tweet about how the defense is overowned, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Right,
Yeah. Right.
Because they always
Yep.
are on the low total games.
Yep.
And then Friday, when Friday comes around, now it's like, okay, who's in, who's out? Now
Yeah.
you start devising strategies in your head. Then
Yeah.
Saturday night, you're like, okay, I'm putting stuff together. And then Sunday, it's just like you wake up early. It's like 10 in the morning. There's some live streams you listen to. You put the headphones on, you tweak your lineups, and then it's
Yep.
red zone. And basically, you're just mainlining football until
Oh,
like
yeah.
midnight.
So for me, the main slate, I don't really get into it until Sunday. Like, I mean, I listen to some podcasts throughout the week, but it's more like entertainment. Like, I'm not actively thinking about the slate
Right.
until Sunday morning. But then Sunday
Oh, so
morning,
you're hold on. So you're not building. So you don't even build any lineups until Sunday morning.
I mean, I build my one like dummy lineup.
Right,
It's just
right.
like going. But yeah, no, I don't build lineups till Sunday morning. Yeah.
Even if there's no threat of like I mean, I can understand like 11:30 inactives, that type of thing. But you don't
No.
You don't even wow.
I mean,
I think I'm a little bit more strategic than like I typically.
Yeah.
Typically, I build my lineups on Saturday afternoon
Okay.
because then I do my Saturday night stupid whatever stream thing
Yeah.
and yell at people, and then but
Yeah, I'm
Sunday
also
morning
not
if
doing
if
content for it. So.
right, but to me, unless I think something's going to change by 11:30 in the morning in actives, why not just get a head start? And also, but
Yeah.
I get maybe the slight difference between me and you is that like in baseball, I'm not going through lineup by lineup going like, should I be playing this guy with that guy and this guy with like I'm like in baseball it's just I'm playing teams. So it's just like ding and just like you just like a shotgun and just whatever, right?
Yeah.
NFL
Same.
are much more methodical.
Yeah, so I know you do a lot of like secondary stacks and stuff like that. And I haven't really built secondary stacks into my process much yet. I think I'll sometimes you can in Fantasy Cruncher, I don't know if the lineup HQ, you can do the same thing. You can, set correlation. So like a slight positive correlation between, this wide receiver and the wide receiver on the other team or something like that.
We can't do that yet. I would love, in Daily Roto's optimizer, it's a boost function.
Okay.
So like basically saying like, if this guy is in the lineup, boost this player's projection by 15%.
Yeah.
Right. So it's very similar to that. Now you could do that in groups in lineup HQ. I'm hoping. I don't know. Maybe we do the correlation boosts for this coming season. I don't know. I don't know what they're doing.
Well, I mean that's what I use for in Fantasy Cruncher. I set groups to do that too. So I just set a group with only 2 players in it sometimes. So is it different than that? I mean, I'll use the groups feature to say if I'm playing Rashad Perriman, then boost.
But you see
Marquez Valdez-Scantling by 5% or 10% or whatever.
Yeah, but you're doing the boost, so you're more likely to get them in lineups. I have to hard code that.
Okay.
Which means like if I'm playing like it's going to be all or nothing. There's no like boost.
Okay.
Right. So like so for instance, if I don't want like a lot of times, I don't want to play possession receivers as one-offs.
Okay.
Right. So like the Randall Cobbs. Right, those types of guys, right? If I'll only play them in stacks. So for instance, for like, I mean, take a if I don't even know the fucking players anymore, right? Because I don't pay attention to anything. Like I'm trying to think of a team, like picture the Bears, like the difference between Allen Robinson and. Let's say I am playing some Anthony Miller. I don't think he's on the team anymore. I think
Darnell Mooney.
Right, but I think Darnell Mooney's not a possession receiver.
Oh right.
But like a guy that's not really expected to get like high A-dot targets, right? Sure. Not going to rack up a punt. Like the only way he gets a lot of yardage is if obviously if they're passing a ton and the quarterback does well.
Right.
So like I'll set the rule a conditional player of like Anthony Miller. And say that if Anthony Miller's in the lineup, it has to be in lineups with whoever Trubisky or Dalton, whoever the Bears whoever the quarterback is. So it forces them into stacks and not as one-offs. Allen Robinson, I don't mind as a one-off. So I don't have
because he could catch 10 passes and
right, or maybe maybe there could be tight ends, and you could set a lot of these. Like I could set tons of groups. Like you could even set types of things where defenses it automatically. You can make it so defense versus offense doesn't happen, but sometimes, like maybe I don't mind the defense. Quick touchdowns, bring the ball back to the other team, and maybe in some lineups, maybe I want the wide receiver on the opposite side of a defense. But I can't do the percentage. I can't do if I boost him by 20%, he's more likely to be in lineups, but he's not guaranteed to be in lineups. Yeah. I could only do it in the. That's why do you think like. If you studied my lineups from last year, you see multiple correlations because I am forced to. Yeah. Right. Like
constrained in the.
So what I end up doing is that in lineup HQ, there's actually a secondary stack tool.
Okay.
That you could just make it so that position versus in half of my lineups I want a wide receiver running back, wide receiver, tight end, running back, wide receiver, tight end, opposite team. So it's like
right.
So
I guess I could do that in Fantasy Cruncher too. Yeah.
But I'm still going by projection. So the point is that I'm still eliminating lineups that don't project well enough for that correlation to even occur. Right? So you're looking down in lineups that it's like, yes, you're right. You got all three correlations in, and the lineup projects 25 points lower than
Right.
other lineups. The correlation isn't worth it then. So, like, some of those correlations just never end up happening because
Right.
it's just that it gives up too much projection. But when it's even, when it comes down to, do I play this running back and this wide receiver or 2v2 and I'm only giving up 0.2 points, I'll take the ones where they're opposite sides of the game. So that's the only reason that I end up with 100 lineups that have, like, wow, you have three. Like, it's a 3+1 stack and two 1+1s and a you know, a one-off tight end or a one-off running back or something like that. And you go, like, how the hell do you make those types? Like, well, because I have to force things in, right? I can't do the boost. I wouldn't get that correlated. But obviously, I know I'm locking myself out of, like, if both sides of the game don't go off, like, I'm ruining lineups.
Sure.
But I understand that the projection still has to be close enough. So I'm not doing that saying all my lineups have to be like that, and if it doesn't project, well, yeah, because that would be stupid.
Right.
But you don't get to fit. Obviously, if I'm doing stuff like that, doing it at 11:30 in the morning before a 1 o'clock start, it's like, like it's gonna take a little time. It typically takes me between 2 or 3 hours to build my NFL lineups. Because then I also scroll down. I also want to manually check them all.
Oh yeah,
right. Because you look through and you go, "Where did I fuck up and leave a group out or something?" And right. But you're doing it similar to your other sports. Maybe not 15 minutes before.
No, yeah. So I say I do it the morning of, but I do wake up early. So, like, NFL starts at noon here in Minnesota. I'll wake up sometimes as early as like 8 a.m., which is super early for me. Definitely not a morning person, but I'll wake up early to do my NFL because I like to do tons of crunches to kind of, figure out how the directions that I want to go. I don't just, do one and I'm done. Like I do sometimes I do that with MLB. It'll be like, I'll do one and I'll be like, that'll work. NFL, I'm definitely going to be adjusting ownership or adjusting projections to get closer to what I want. And I run several before I get there.
Right. But you're pretty much, but you're spending about the same amount of time. It's just, you end up doing it Sunday morning.
Yeah, exactly.
And I'm not a morning person either.
Yeah.
So to me, I feel like I'm more of a night person. So my more productive from a mental perspective is going to be at, like, I try, like, on Saturdays, I try to make my lineups the same time that I would make my MLB NBA lineups. So it's 6, 7 o'clock. Okay. I feel like that's my best, like, mental state. I'm used to that time period. But the morning stuff, like, no, I do an 11 o'clock a.m. show. Sometimes I don't wake up until 10:30.
Yeah.
To do this, like, and I roll out of bed, going like literally half the time, like, should I just cancel it for today? Like, I feel like going back to sleep. Like, I'm not a morning person. So and I do wake up at like 8:30, 9 o'clock in the morning for NFL on NFL Sundays.
Yeah.
But to me, it's the getting, like, I'm doing that because I'm waking up. There's the Roto Grinders has a stream, or Awesemo has a stream, it's I don't drink coffee anymore, but it would be the type of thing where get my coffee. I got everything set already. I may tweak some things, but I know I'm relaxed. Got everything set. Maybe I'm setting my, like, afternoon. I'm entering my afternoon contest or something. And then I could casually, is there anything surprising in 11:30 inactives? And if there is, then I start. But it feels like I could go through some lineups. Okay, I'm going to switch this around with that around. Should I really have this much Joe Mixon? Maybe I can eliminate some of these lines. Like, it's much more leisurely. It's not NBA DFS where 653. Oh my God, switch this out, and then I got 3 spreadsheets open, and, like, I don't want that.
And then it's the rest of the night too with NBA.
Right.
There's so many.
But at least it's at night. If it was 8 in the morning, I wouldn't play. I mean, I would not be in the mental state. I'd be half asleep.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, so you're making me think that I probably could do NFL a day early. Maybe it's just because I'm so used to the other slates, and I hate redoing things. So that's part of it too, is I'm like, I don't want to leave open the possibility I'm going to put in all this work, and then the next day it's going to be for nothing because there's some player got ruled out unexpectedly.
Yeah, but you'd know that beforehand. See, before on Saturday night, you'd make 2 builds for that.
Okay.
So
No, but
that's
like,
what I like.
mean,
We have
I'm
those.
talking about like players you're not expecting, like out of
Yeah,
nowhere.
but I mean,
kind of
how
stuff.
often does that happen?
Yeah, that's true.
Right? It doesn't happen that often. Ezekiel,
I guess that's the
we
difference
had that
between
at Tony
NFL.
Pollard one, right? That was
Yeah,
but then I don't mind doing that one because no, you couldn't possibly 11:30 once he was inactive. I just take Tony Pollard and I almost I go give me
yeah,
80%.
slam.
Right?
Yeah,
Exactly. Almost a lock button.
yeah,
Right? But so there's even if you did it at 8 o'clock in the morning, you would have never known. You'd be redoing it anyway. So anything I could understand of situations where like the guy could be out or could be in, but even then you could kind of you're not going to know
plan
that
for it.
you're not going to know that till
Yeah,
90 minutes before lock anyway.
true.
So you're going to be redoing that no matter what. So either you're going to do it twice by either reacting at 90 minutes before, or you're just going to make two builds
Yeah,
and go at 11:30. I have two CSVs. Which one am I using?
yeah. But then there's also so like I guess with NFL, maybe ownership projections don't change as much as other sports. Maybe because I've never tried doing it earlier, I don't really know how much things change. But like NBA and MLB, I feel like even ownership can change late in the day, and that'll change how I want to approach it. So my concern with doing it a day before would be like, well, maybe this player is showing up as 5% right now, but then tomorrow it's going to be 20% as the ownership catches up. Doesn't happen.
Now,
Okay.
the closer that you get to clock, the less ownership is going to change. I mean, even when news happens,
Yeah.
like
Okay.
that's why I say if anything happens on Sunday morning, you jam it
Yeah.
in
Well,
large
so that's
field
what.
because people don't. But anything that's in content, if something happened on Wednesday, by Saturday night, the ownership will be efficient because
Okay.
there's no what ownership will change from Saturday night to Sunday morning.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
Like what would happen? I mean,
Yeah.
like I don't
Maybe,
like
maybe
there's-
there are no touts big enough to kind of change the whole.
all the
pool
content is already out.
in NFL.
So like
Yeah.
so like it's already done. Like
Yeah.
there's nothing anyway.
Huh.
It's not going to change I have not noticed that. Right. I've
Okay.
not noticed that
Good to know.
that Adam Thielen is 8% owned on Saturday night and then 23% owned when I wake up at Sunday morning in the projections. Like I don't see that. 2%, maybe 1 or 2%, maybe.
Okay.
But typically it doesn't. I don't know. Ask Alex. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I don't
Maybe he
notice that
knows.
it moves. So am I convincing you to do it the night before?
Kind of. Yeah. Now I'm
But I
thinking
don't
about it.
see. Truthfully, I don't think you should do that. From a superstitious perspective,
Right. I've
your
had luck.
process,
I've had
you
some
won
good
the
luck.
Millie Maker.
Yeah. Why
So
change?
why fuck
change?
with it, right? I mean,
Yeah.
because that's obviously the reason why you won.
Yeah. It's because I did it the day off. That's the only.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what your
how you
advice
win.
to new players.
That's my advice. Do it
Right.
day of. Yep. Don't start until a few hours before lock at most. Yeah.
And
That's
all
good
they
advice.
need is your magical optimizer settings and
Press the button. It'll tell you who to play, which lineups to play.
right.
Yeah.
Right. And no one gives their own personal settings and anything that they say on shows, they're doing the exact opposite.
Right. I love that. So the other thing with that, with the, because I've seen that with Alex Baker a few times. He'll say on the show, I remember from a few years ago, it was like, I really like the Pirates today. Like they're a low owned stack, like they're going to do well. And then seeing somebody like call him out on Twitter afterwards, like he said he loved the Pirates today, but then he won with this lineup with the Angels stack. And it's
Yeah,
like,
because he
it's
had
also like
150 lineups.
he has a ton of lineups. Like he's gonna usually win with not his favorite lineup. Like that's it's always funny to me seeing how irrational people are.
Well, do they think that he's putting in 150 Pirates lineups?
They must. I don't know what they think.
Right. Right, but that's what you could make plus EV. I mean, what I tell people is that most slates, you could take a 5-man stack of any team and build a lineup that would be profitable over 100,000 slates. There may not be many of some of the lowest teams, right? But at their ownership and their projection, depending on who you put in the rest of your lineup, obviously the 1% owned, nothing percent owned, lowest probability team, you're most likely jamming in the highest projected guys, no matter what their ownership is at the other positions.
Yep.
But that lineup, that specific lineup may actually be, it may not be heavily profitable. It may be profitable. It may win somewhat enough of the time first place that it does end up being profitable. Now you change 2 of those players, 2 of the one-offs to 2 other guys. Maybe that stack, maybe there's literally only one lineup with that stack that is plus EV over that sample size. Maybe there's 10.
Right.
Maybe there's 50. Obviously, the better projected lower owned teams, there may be hundreds of them. Or I mean, they may be.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
so your choice is like that one lineup, that Pirates lineup with jamming and everything else may actually have the same EV as some like chalky lineup or something like that.
Right.
Right. They may both
Based on the rest of your
right.
yeah.
Right. This lineup may not cash often at all, but when it wins everything. It just wins once every God knows how many. And this other one may win
stats,
cash
right?
more. Right. But to me those are the concepts. And it's not you have to think non-linearly. Like it's a weird. That's why it's weird to me. Like as a lawyer, is that something that you think of like as a lawyer? Because you have to, it's not cognitive dissonance. It's the fact that like you could have 10,000 answers that are right to the same problem that have all different variables. It just depends on what specific thing happens today. But since you can't predict what's going to happen today, the probability of these 10,000 things are all equal. So there's no correct, like, which one is the right answer. It's just, as long as you play one of those 10,000, if you skew too far away from that, then you're not going to win often enough. So, like, to me, the sharpest players, like we mentioned before, are building 150 outcomes that have high enough probability versus their ownership that they don't know which one of the 150, but then it comes into that criticism, which is people don't understand correlation versus causation, that people only win because they only have 150 because they have 150 lineups.
Oh yeah. Right.
It's like, well, good build 150 bad lineups and see how quickly you go broke, because you could play 150 great plus EV lineups and still go broke, right?
Yeah.
So imagine playing 150 bad lineups.
Yeah.
And then it gets into what's a good lineup and what's a bad lineup, and I think that's where that singularity occurs, where it's not about the players anymore. It's just building plus EV lineups. But that's what I try to do in the course. I mean, but to me, that's the biggest step, and I think it's more valuable than like learning R.
Oh yeah, no, I agree. Like, I feel like I have evolved in my thinking about what I would do if I quit my day job, went DFS full time. There was a time a few years ago, a couple years ago maybe even, where my dream was to make my own projections. And I was like, I'm going to make the most precise projections, and I'm going to have more factors in my projections than anybody else, and I'm just going to crush it. And now I have zero desire to do that, because I'm like, no, I use Osmo projections and I adjust them based on ownership. But it's like, I just don't see the value in doing that when there's already good projections out there. And I don't think that that's how you win. And I know, and there are top players who do build their own projections, but I feel like now I move more to like, if I had more time, I would study what the top players are doing more. Like, I want to see how Broronosaurus Rex or Broronosaurus Flex keeps on having the top lineup every night, or Aha Bro. I want to study those lineups, because I feel like they have the game theory. They have better game theory than I have, I think, is how they are winning every night. Or
they get lucky.
Obviously not every night,
right?
But a larger portion than is would be expected of anybody. So.
Yeah, but I don't think that. But truthfully, their process isn't that dramatically different than what we're doing.
Probably not. Yeah, not dramatically.
I don't think if you can name the Colts and Alex, like Brick. Even whistles go like all across the board, and even lower stakes. I mean, like we're mentioning people that we know. There's tons of people that I respect that no one knows who they are, right? I know their usernames, and I know it's like here's a sharp person. They only play 20 lineups, but I'm like I know they're good. I mean, they're doing what I did 3 years ago.
Yeah.
Not play 150. They're playing 20 lineups into the contest. I see people in the mini. There are people that are playing the mini max that are they're really just as good as some of the top players. Just that they currently only have a $2,000 bankroll. So now they're going to end up becoming monsters 3 years from now. Yep. But I don't believe no one is doing anything dramatically different than what we're describing. It's just the process of how to get to those answers may be coming from all different types of hubs. They're doing something where it's like
I mean,
some use simulations more, some use heavily lean on projections, but their projection model is so different that they're automatically gaining leverage that they don't even have to consider ownership anymore.
but like in baseball, I think even among the top players, there's a difference in like how many stacks do I want to play. Like I heard you mention on your show, and I haven't done this lineup, so you mentioned like Ricky D only plays a few different stacks,
Right.
and like really focuses on certain teams. And even Aha Bro, when you were talking to him, he was saying that he limits it to like the top 10 or 12 stacks or something. Whereas I feel like my process still, I'm usually more spread out than that. Not always, but like on a 15 game slate, I'm going to play a lot more than 12 teams in my 5-man stacks typically. And I feel like what I would like to do is study, which lineups are they eliminating? Are they eliminating like the highest owned stacks? Are they eliminating like based on like if I look at the top stacks tool, are they eliminating the most negative leverage stacks? Like where do they find those lines is the kind of thing that, it's a similar process to mine, but I feel like, I still have, I'm more spread out than a lot of the top players and probably less spread out than some too. But,
yeah, but that's a matter of risk tolerance. That's not like,
yeah, that's true.
Like Giant Squid is very similar also. Like,
is spread out or is
no,
he
very condensed. Just like
okay.
I'm going to take a bet on basically three stacks, and just if I have a million shots, like it's like here's like you see ownership of like exposures of like 40 to 50% on like a whole bunch of people, and it's a large slate, and just like either they do well or they, but to me that's not a strategy. That's just that they believe those are the three best spots, and they're doubling, tripling, quadrupling down on it.
Right.
And to me, I do the same thing when I play a single entry or a 3-max contest, right? I'm playing the 121, I'm playing the 250 4-max, and I'm like, okay, in my 100 set or whatever, like I'm playing 14 different stacks at different, but what am I playing the most of? Where do I think I'm getting the most? Well, that's going to be in my single entry line. I mean, like no matter what it is, I know that in the single entry 3-max stuff that the people are that the ownership gets even more condensed. So I'm more likely, like that Boston-Toronto game from yesterday. It's like I ain't touching it in this 121. I'm just like not. If I just don't touch this game, I could just build whatever the hell lineup I wanted. I thought Cincinnati and Philadelphia were the two best, in comparison to their ownership, based on my little cheat sheet here.
They did pretty well, right?
Yeah, no, that they did do well, right? I mean, I didn't win the contest or anything, but it's like. But I had a lot of them in my normal MME set anyway. But to me, it's the same thing. Like, but what they'll do is they'll identify, I had Cincinnati, Philadelphia, Washington, and Chicago, and they'll just basically say, I want 25% of each, 5-man stacks, and then whatever fits in the rest. And they may have, Toronto one-offs. They may have 3-mans of some other thing, but it's like they pick 4 teams and then.
Interesting,
right?
Yeah.
Or the pitcher, they may pick 4 teams and have 90% of one pitcher, and the 90% of one pitcher may not even be the most owned pitcher. It may be the pitcher that's 5% owned, and they're playing 90% of them, and it's like that's their core.
Yep.
And then they rotate around, but they have to realize that over the scope of a 162 game season, 180 slates or whatever, that they're gonna put in $4,000 and get. Some nights get $100 back.
Yeah, there's gonna be some downswings. You got to have a bankroll and some mental fortitude, I think, to do that, because that'll be some pretty huge downswings.
Right. If you don't mind me asking, what has been your largest downswing? We all know what your biggest upswing is.
Yeah. So
$1 million, obviously.
From the day after the millie to April 20th.
It's funny that it's right after you, right? Because you're like, I could beat the world. Why not?
Yeah, well, and
you got negative regression.
Like I said, I've seen the advice. Like, well, if you're up for a lot, just slam in entries at the end of the year, because everything you win is going to be taxed at a 40% rate anyway.
Right.
I don't know. I don't think it makes sense, but we won't go into that. But yeah, I slammed in entries because I wanted to, and I had a lot of money at that point. I had a downswing of, I want to say around $150,000 downswing so it was October 26th to 420. And then the next day I won $100,000, and I've been up since then.
So basically $150,000 downswing between, like that sounds like a 5-month period?
Yep. So end of October.
That isn't over for that length, for the volume that you play, isn't all. it's weird to say. Some people listening may be going, well, that's a lot for that.
Yeah, right.
For that time period. Like my largest is 30,000 over like 4 months.
Okay.
But also
Which is a
remember,
lot
I'm
less.
nitty as fuck. So
Yeah. True.
Right. So
Yeah.
that's why. But I think someone mentioned on Twitter. You show your rotor tracker on Twitter sometimes, and I do also. And I showed mine once or whatever, and people were responding. It's like, and I showed all the downswing, the little arrows, and people were responding. So where are the downswings?
Right.
Right. They look, and it's like
doesn't look like mine.
Right. It does. Right. It's like how come you don't have? It's like first off, I play some cash games, so that evens things out a bit, and I don't play 150 max into every. I don't. Like,
I think I might have been one of those people who was like, why does yours look so? Yours looks like a ladder. Like it's just like steps up. There's no like
dramatic steps down. No, there are steps down. They're not.
But they're
not
like
deep steps.
This,
right.
Not like.
Right. Well, there's a difference between the steps and the slopes. Right. The slope. The reason my slopes are shallower is because I play cash games.
Right.
Right, because obviously I'm making enough money, so instead of losing money in GPPs day after day after day, I'm making a little bit enough so that kind of like tilts it a little bit there. It's still going down, and then my step ups are obviously because my losses aren't going to be larger because I'm not playing 150 lineups.
Yeah.
So like that's the only that's the only difference. But
I mean those are
But also
it makes
depends
sense
on your goal.
when
Like
you describe it like that.
Right.
Yep.
It almost feels like I have to justify myself.
No, I mean, I was just like, when I responded, I was like, man, how can I make mine look more like that? Like, what is it cash games? Like, what do I need to do to not ever have these? Because they can be pretty hard to take sometimes.
The problem is that with the way that I play, you're never going to have these.
Right.
Like if you were playing like me,
or at least fewer of them. Right. Yeah.
But I'm just saying, if you were playing like me last year, you wouldn't have won $1 million.
Right. That's true.
Right. Because you wouldn't have been in the million maker.
Right. Yep.
So to me, that's the risk reward.
Those are the trade-offs. Yep.
Right. Those are exactly. I absolutely understand that. I always have to justify it because the prevalence in the industry is geared towards show me those big screenshots, and it's like no, I'll show you 1099 at the end of the year. I mean,
right. Yeah.
Like I think it's noble to want to try to make the most amount of money for the least amount of work and the least amount of risk.
Yeah.
And only because
it's sustainable.
Right. Well, I just can't. I play poker, so I'm used to the upswings, downswings. It's not like I don't know that. It's that like I can't fathom. Like I talk to other sharp players, that they could win 100. Like you could win 100,000, you win 50,000, and you're down for the season.
Right.
And it's like, dude, if I win 50,000 at any point in this MLB season, I'm guaranteed a profit. Like, because and he's like, well, because you're playing low vol. I'm still playing like $1,500 a slate. Like, I'm not playing it's just that I'm playing 2 entries into the 250. I'm playing 1 entry into the 121. I'm playing 60 entries into the large. And on those bat flip days for that $18 contest, I'm playing on FanDuel. Right? Because I'm not either. I'm only going to play about 40 lineups into that contest, or I'm just going to go and if I'm going to play a lotto, let me play a lotto for $4.44.
Yep, exactly.
And play 150
That's why I play
entries
those.
there.
It's like, man.
Right. I mean, but to me that's the basis. And I see these graphs that are like, dude, you could get to almost the same point without those downswings. Just play like a nit.
Right.
It's like that's boring as fuck. It's like, well,
then don't. Yeah.
Then don't. That's fine. That's fine.
Yeah.
I just want to get to the end. Like if you're going up and down, up and down, up and down, up and down. At the end of the year, you have $100,000. Like, dude, I could get to the $100,000 by going. I mean, like, so why not save myself the ulcers?
So for me, I just haven't had success at cash games. Like I would play the cash games
but how about the smaller field? I'm not even talking about the cash games. How about the smaller field stuff?
Right. Yeah, that's true.
Right, because I mean, like playing the 555 or the 2, those levels types of thing. Not necessarily the monster or the thunder, like the $1,000 stuff. But it's like those contests to me are much more like you could just take your top projected, build your 150 set and put your number one lineup in or something like that. But to me, they're much more sustainable. The problem with those is that you're dealing with a lot sharper players.
Yeah. Right. Well, like the like, I know Eric at one point was saying that his favorite Eric Bimefor was saying that his favorite contest is the one that's like $250 entry, like a 4 max or 3 max.
Yeah.
And then it's like a $15,000 as top prize because it's I think it's a very flat payout structure. And I have found that when I play those, I'm like, I rarely lose all my money. If I enter 4 in there, I'll get 1 in there, and I might lose 4. Like I might put 1,000 in and win back 600 because only
Right.
1 gets in there. But I think like from a sustainability standpoint and like just trying to go like, slow curve, that does make a lot of sense to me. I would probably play those more. So like I said earlier, it would make more sense for me probably to play those if because I'm afraid of having my best lineup in that contest rather than one where I can win 50 or 100,000.
Yeah, but you could.
I should
You
probably
could
just
double
play the
that
same
one.
lineup.
Like
That's what I'm
right.
thinking is I should just do that. That makes sense.
Right, because it doesn't represent as much of an like if you want to put the $250 entry contest also in the bat flip for 18. Maybe you're giving up a little bit of EV because you're really the lineup that you're playing in the 250 is probably not leveraged as much as it should be for the $18 contest. But if
Right.
it gives you peace of mind,
Yeah,
it's probably
exactly.
still plus EV in the $18 contest, just not high. You probably could build better lineups, but in
Right.
comparison to the 250, it's like what's the worst? I mean, then I could understand it.
Yeah.
But to me, that's so much more sustainable.
Yeah, for sure.
Than like because I've been playing on FanDuel more this MLB season, and I could tell you how frustrating it is, dude. I think I've had this season like 17 top 20s.
Yeah.
And like I think 17 top 20s and 9 top 10s.
It's a lot of steak knives.
A lot of steak knives. 1 second place. One second, a 5th, a 6th, and these payouts are fucking stupid.
It's terrible. They are the worst.
Terrible.
But it's also what they need to do to suck in guys like me. Like I see, first place is 40,000. I'll probably enter that. If they do the same thing with a flatter payout structure, but top prize is 15,000, I might not.
Yeah, I do the complete opposite. When I see that and it's flatter, I max enter it.
And that makes sense.
Doesn't that make a lot? Shouldn't that make sense?
I should do that. Yeah. What I wish they would do is just have larger contests, but I guess they can't fill them.
Fill everything, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but to me, that's where the frustration part comes in. Is that I'm placing lineups in the top 0.1%.
Yeah.
And I'm down.
Yeah.
It's like
no, I get that.
Like that.
I've had a lot of that too.
Right. Well, everyone has, but it makes it so much easier when you could just go to the small field stuff and be like, I know I'm playing against much better players, but the ownership condense. It's a different type of game. You switch on your small field game. You build your lineups. Typically, that's what I do for MLB. I'll go out for a cigarette, right? I'll build my 3 small field lineups, and then come back.
So you don't drink. You don't drink coffee. You don't drink alcohol, but you do smoke cigarettes.
Yeah, well, that's I haven't given up that addiction yet, right?
Not yet. Okay.
Soon. It'll happen soon, right? I was never did any drugs, right?
Wow.
Never smoked weed. No, I don't like drugs at all. No recreational stuff. Never gotten drunk.
Never in your life.
Nope.
Oh wow. Okay.
I could count the amount of alcoholic drinks I could have in a year in like one hand.
Wow.
Right. Like
okay.
I don't like the taste. I don't like the way. Why would you want to feel that way? I don't even understand why you would. But then when it comes to stimulants, that's a different thing. A pot of coffee and a pack of cigarettes, give it to me.
Sure.
Right.
Yep.
Right. So it's one of the other.
I enjoy both. So
Right.
But I hear what you're saying.
It's a stress reliever.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
The only thing is I can't smoke inside because my wife and whatever. So that's why I have to go out, whatever. But that CSV tilt at 7:04.
Pain in the ass.
Right.
Yeah. Right.
Okay. So player, why you player Q? You just chose that.
So that's kind of a funny story. So at one point I thought that I was going to eventually be a tout, and I was, and maybe I still will. But at one point I thought that I was going to create my own site, and I wanted to have like Player X. I thought it might be a good name for a website, and this is, I don't know, 10 years ago at this point. I bought the rights to several different names: Player Q, Player W, Player 6. I can't tell you what they were, but random letters and numbers.
No, you're talking about domain names.
Domain names.
You bought the rights to a name.
Maybe this will be my website someday. Will be playerq.com. So that was one. So Player Q is the one that I ended up with because I at one point got an offer through some website. Somebody offered me like, I'd like to buy Player Q from you. And I said, okay, yeah, I'll make a deal with you. And eventually we basically made a deal for they would buy it from me for $5,000, and then they backed out. Okay. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to flip this and make. And at the time, that was a lot of money for me. Like that was a lot of money. I could have used that money.
That's a lot of money for a domain name, also. Yes, for playerq.com.
Right.
Yes.
So I was excited about that. So I thought I'm going to flip this. I'm going to turn it into a positive by making this like my brand. This is going to be my website when I start, doing DFS content. So it's going to be a good thing that I didn't sell this. Was sort of my mentality that I decided, yeah, I should make this. I should use this brand. And now I don't do that at all. I'm not QAnon, so I want to be clear about that. The Q isn't because of QAnon.
Is there anything at I'm going to playerq.com?
There's nothing there.
It's just that is available on GoDaddy auction. Should I try to auction? Should I try to buy it from you?
It's available on GoDaddy auctions, huh? Yeah, make an offer. I don't know.
Or,
I don't even know
if it's at GoDaddy, I think it's automatically on your landing page, just in case that you could sell it. Can I ask you a brand? Since I come from the digital marketing background,
sure.
What was it a mistake if you're going to name yourself Player Q and buy the domain name? Wouldn't your DraftKings and FanDuel username shouldn't it have been Player Q?
If I had thought of this, so I had already had those usernames before the whole website thing. So I got bad user. Nobody remembers my usernames on DraftKings or FanDuel. I feel like if I had a better name, I might have a little bit more name recognition among DFS players.
What is the 8K stand? It's NC Orfield. So I'm assuming that's Neil
Collin.
Right. Yep. Middle initial Orfield. What's the 8K?
So it was my AIM username in college. So I was a cross country runner, and 8K was the distance we ran. Just like picked, my 18 years old, picking it going into freshman year of college. I was like, okay, this will be my instant messenger username, and I still use it.
So why couldn't your domain name be 8K DFS?
It could have been.
It could have been better than Player Q.
I wish I would have given this more thought.
Right.
but I didn't.
You had grand visions of.
I had grand visions, and not a lot of thought went into it.
Right, and now you see now how stupid that was, right?
I do.
Right.
Big mistakes made all around.
But you're Player Q DFS. But now that you're not Player Q, why don't you change your Twitter name to NC Orfield 8K? Or you don't do that because you don't care about branding anymore because you're just making money and who cares?
That's part of it, yeah. Because I no longer have like really given it much thought, and now I'm like, well, so in my interview with Osmo, he had, at Player Q DFS at the bottom of my screen. So if people go there, I want them to be able to find me.
Right. I have that on the screen here for this also.
Yeah. So should I change it right now? And then you can put NC over it? No, I'll stick with it for now. Maybe I'll think about changing it though.
Right. Made this page so I could talk about DFS without worrying about annoying my friends who don't care.
Yeah.
So basically no one in your quote real life has any clue.
They do now. They care more now.
Oh, because you won $1 million.
Yeah, now that I won $1 million, they want to talk to me about DFS. They want to know how to play that kind of stuff. But yeah, definitely like.
But before that, it's.
I mean, I don't think some of them probably would have told me, but some of them wouldn't have told. Some of them would have told me that they cared. They want to hear my bad beat stories, but I wouldn't have believed them. So.
So now what do they ask you?
I mean, I have friends who ask me about process, ask me about the plays on a given slate, of course. Yeah, no, I mean,
do you tell them to look at the projections like I do?
Right.
Just go look at the projection, play whatever you want. There you go.
Yeah.
Bye.
Yeah. I mean, I've tried to teach people like MLB, the stacking, that kind of stuff, the rudimentary stuff. I still don't talk a lot with most of my in-person friends, at least my real life friends. We still don't talk a lot of DFS. So. Yeah. And then I've got some cousins who are getting into DFS, and I talk with them about it. I had one cousin who actually got Fantasy Cruncher at one point, and I tried to try to teach him the settings and some of like my thought processes to go through it. And he seemed to be picking it up, at least. I don't know that he actually won anything significant, but he seemed to be getting it. So maybe this year. How about
family and people like that? My father still doesn't seem to like most of my family thinks that I bet on sports.
Oh yeah. Oh, for sure. And I mean, I think my mom would still like me to quit. Like she sees me winning, I tell her about my wins, and she's still like, okay, but man, you're taking risks. You got to stop doing that. And it's yeah, my family still doesn't entirely get it. I guess it's hard to convince people that it is a skills based game. I think
No,
if they don't
I,
totally understand it.
no, they believe it's a skill based game. They just don't understand the mechanics. Like my
Right,
mother-in-law
right.
would like if they came over and there was a game on or something like that. Which team do you have?
Okay.
And
Yeah,
like I
yeah.
don't have team. Like I'm just talking about like they don't even understand the concept of fantasy sports.
Right,
That
right.
you're taking people from like different. Because my father, like I played fantasy sports when I was younger, but my father never did. He
Right.
followed sports, but never to that extent. So it's hard to get out of that mentality of like, well, what team do you need to win? It's like I don't even care who wins. I just need
Yeah.
this guy to do well and that guy to
Right.
do well.
I think my family gets that at this point.
Right.
We've been talking about it long enough that they sort of understand the fantasy aspect of it, at
Right.
least. They'd still prefer that I don't do it for the most part, but
Why not? Oh, because you're a lawyer and right, just
yeah,
like
yeah,
just do your
right,
law stuff.
yeah,
Do you think that you'd ever quit doing law stuff and do this?
I do, I think about it all the time. Like I regularly think about, is it really worth it for me? Because I make a lot more money at DFS than I do at my day job, uh, and also it's a lot more stressful. Like it's I'm on a quota system, a monthly quota system. So like right now it's kind of crunch time for me, and I'm just like working long hours every day. And
Oh,
that's also, I mean, that's
so your law job is more stressful.
oh yeah, it's way more stressful than DFS. So the only reason that I keep the law job is because I have concerns that once I quit, DFS will become infinitely more stressful if I'm relying on the money as opposed to it's bonus money.
Right. Well, that's why you put money. That's why you do. You already have you want $1 million, right?
Yeah,
You have money in the bank, right?
can't retire on that though.
Ah, you can. In some places you can. Why not?
Sure, that's true.
Right? You get an 8% return. I mean,
I do have the benefit of a wife who has a good job. Her day job pays better than mine does, so
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 what the hell are
she's
you doing?
I know.
Do you have any
I think
kids?
about it all the time. No kids.
Oh, come on! You have the dream. Come on.
Listen, if I were a single man, I would have quit my job the day I won the millie.
Yeah, but you have
But
what
you know,
dependent? You have no dependents. I have no dependents. I have my
I
wife
know.
and a dog.
Yeah, yeah, right.
Right.
But my wife is more risk averse than I am, and
Okay.
she's open to the idea. Just some
I'm not trying
you know.
to. I don't want to be. I don't want your wife to get on me because that
Oh,
guy
yeah.
convinced you to quit your job. But I mean, it's more
No, you're not
important
the
for you to be
first.
happy.
Yeah, no. It could happen this year. It could happen this month. To be honest, I mean,
Well, it could
probably not.
happen. It
Probably
could
not in
happen
July.
after today's slate.
It could. If I win tonight, maybe that'll be the straw that gets me to quit my day
Right.
job.
And
I don't
but
know.
but you always fill your time with other money making endeavor. You could find your way into other things,
Yeah, it's true.
right? I mean,
Yeah.
it's the recur. I mean, obviously, because when just like when I play poker for a living, like I also ran a game, so like I made money
Okay.
from running. I mean, so like I'm not fully like I will always want to get into into the point where like can I do something that's related to what I'm doing that at
Yeah.
least covers the bills,
Well, I've thought about getting into content somewhere. I could think
right?
about doing that. If I could find a content job, maybe I would quit my job. But
It
I don't
doesn't
know.
pay that.
Just
To trust me, it doesn't pay that much.
okay.
It doesn't.
That's what I've heard both
Don't.
things. I've heard people say like it doesn't pay that much, and then I've heard you make more than a lot of people think you do. So I don't know.
I guess it depends on what you. It depends on what you're doing.
Yeah,
It
right,
depends
right.
on where you are. It depends on what you're doing. It depends. It depends on a lot of things.
Yeah, I'm sure.
I mean, just to put things into perspective. I mean, like at Roto Grinders, like I make enough doing the shows all the time and everything like that that it's nice, but it's not. It's nothing that I could. I couldn't live off of it.
Okay,
But having my own thing to
interesting.
sell is a different story
Right,
because then
right.
I get all of the money,
The
right? I
theory of
get
DFS. Yeah,
right. So like to me, it's a prong, but I mean I come from that type of experience.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
like you're like oh I don't know about quitting my job. It's like I haven't had a real job since I was 23. So like
Yeah,
so my whole thing is to whatever I'm doing hustle and right.
yeah.
If I'm doing
And
stand up, I'm doing video editing for other people. I'm doing website design for comedy clubs. I'm doing like I'm trying to
Wow.
find anything that I can to like to not have to
Renaissance
rely
man.
on
Okay.
right to doing just stand up to make a
Yeah.
living. You could do
Yeah, and
that for anything.
I think honestly I might be happier at least at this point doing more of that than a 9 to 5. I'm the only person in my family with a 9 to 5. My dad owned his own remodeling company.
Okay. What does your wife? What does your wife do?
Oh, not include my nuclear family that I was
Okay.
raised in, not
Okay.
my wife. Yeah.
And
So
are you originally from Minneapolis area?
Yeah, was born in Minneapolis. I've grew up around the Twin Cities, then went off to Boston for college. Lived in Boston and Brooklyn for a little while, and then moved back here for law school, and I've been here ever since.
Brooklyn, New York, right?
Yeah.
And
Just for a couple of years there.
Right.
Just wanted to gentrify for a while.
Where in Brooklyn?
Greenpoint.
Okay, Polish area, right? Okay.
Yep. Very Polish.
Obviously, I'm originally from Brooklyn.
Oh, you're from Brooklyn?
Yes.
Okay. I knew you're from New York. I didn't know it was Brooklyn. Okay.
Yeah.
Where in Brooklyn are you
when
from?
I grew up in Brooklyn, when I was a kid, Greenpoint was and Bushwick and Bed-Stuy. That's where they dropped the bodies.
Really?
That's where
It's pretty gentrified now. Yeah.
Right. That's what I'm saying. It's like I left New York when I was 27. I mean, it was already Williamsburg was gentrified. I mean, like all those areas. I had an apartment in Carroll Gardens, like Park Slope, Carroll Gardens area.
Nice.
But I mean, I'm originally from Mill Basin, which is like South Brooklyn.
Okay. Don't even know it.
Sorry, you don't even know. Right. You didn't even go down. You probably by the other end of Flatbush Avenue.
Okay.
Yeah,
I mean, I was in Brooklyn for 2 years. I think not even 2 years. So I don't know most of Brooklyn, to be honest. I was mostly I was in Greenpoint. I was in Williamsburg. I wasn't much anywhere else. So.
Okie doke. Player Q DFS on Twitter. And if you want to buy playerq.com, offers are being accepted.
Come to me. That's right.
Unless you want to use that. Unless
I don't think so. I think that dream is dead.
The dream is dead. You could do a QAnon DFS site.
It's an interesting concept. Probably suck some people in.
Right.
Pretend nobody knows who Q is, right? Maybe I'm Q.
Right.
Probably sucker some people into giving me some money.
No, you know what you do? You partner up with Tommy G.
That's right. Yeah, me and Tommy. Oh man, that would be interesting.
Right. QAnon DFS. Why not?
Yeah, love it.
Right. Oh, and all the conspiracy. That's where all the DFS conspiracies lie. Right. Who is Q? Right. Who set up the lie? Right.
Yeah.
Because you see that dude. Go on some of these Facebook groups. I got to send you some of these links. There's some. I'm in Facebook groups. I don't participate or anything like that.
Okay.
I mean, Reddit is bad, but these Facebook groups that you see, if there's a bad, like we have these umpires, like bad strike zones or whatever.
Oh yeah.
People that seriously believe that the guy strike three on outside the plate, they got to stop letting the umpires play DFS. He obviously has he obviously has DFS lineups. It's like.
I've seen a lot of, just on Twitter, I see plenty of conspiracy theories. Right. Did you see the Broflex conspiracy theory?
Yes, I saw that on Reddit. Right, he's an
I love that. That was so good.
No, but the laughable ones are the ones where it's like Lillard is shooting bad because his friend has him in DFS.
Right.
Dude, the basketball players make more money than any DFS contest.
They don't give a shit about your DFS
contest. Yeah. If they wanted to give their friend $50,000, they could just give him $50,000.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
If anything's being fixed, it's more of a betting market, and it's because the player owes money to some triad from China that's going to kill their family. Like it's going to be. If anything, it's that. It's not because their friend has them in a DFS lineup.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad those people are playing DFS.
Right. No, you should be the tout for them.
Right. Yeah.
Right. That's why playerq.com.
You're right. It's a good idea. Playerq.com.
QAnon DFS. Right.
Come for all the latest conspiracy theories.
Right. And you don't even post your face or anything. I mean, like.
Of course.
Right. I mean, now that we've blown your cover, it's not a very good idea anymore.
I'll post Tommy G's face.
Oh, well, they wouldn't believe.
He's already.
Right.
You don't. I mean, I feel like Tommy G among that crowd has like the ultimate.
Yeah, but he can't be Q. He has to know Q knows Q.
Right. Yeah.
He's the interpreter, right?
I follow what you're saying now.
Right. Yeah. So you can't
I'm
be
Q and I'm not. Yeah. I got
you. Okay. So Player Q DFS on Twitter. You could see Neil on probably above you in contests in mostly every sport. NC Orfield 8K. And I appreciate coming on. I mean, this was a long episode. I also appreciate the that if you follow on Twitter, I consider you one of the more reality based DFS players. Like we post
I try to be.
Roto Track. I mean, as far as being transparent and open, like you don't have to share everything, but I mean, it's
Right.
not all screenshots and not and genuine conversation where it's not people
Right.
just fucking making fun of each other or ripping on everyone.
Setting up boxing matches.
Right, setting up boxing matches that never happen.
Right.
Maybe we should do a charity boxing match.
Yeah. I think I don't know that I want to box.
Me
Doesn't
neither.
interest me. To be honest
That's
with
why
you.
we do it. Two
Okay,
people
all right,
that don't
let's do it.
right, that don't have a beef with each
Just
other.
forced to box.
And force the box, right?
It's an interesting idea.
Right?
Can't we just like play darts?
No. I don't want to play with Siege.
Okay,
Because
right,
Siege
good
plays
point. Good
darts.
point.
Right.
Well, I don't have 5,000 followers, so I don't have to worry about that.
No one's gonna get that other than maybe like
Yeah,
7
I
people
know.
or whatever. As long as there's 20 to 25 witnesses there, that's all that matters.
That's right.
Right. Okay. As always, you can get the Theory of Daily Fantasy Sports 15-hour audio DFS masterclass at theoryofdfs.com.